There's no word on whether the crashes might have been some sort of act of terrorism, but the FBI is investigating that possibility.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world. The United States has conducted an operation that killed
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Leader of Al-Qaeda.
It's about time some of you got acquainted with the real hard truth. Be prepared for a major attack.
We have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
It will be those behind the New World Order.
Shortly afterward, another plane hit the other tower, causing another massive explosion.
Another social illusion, social engineering project to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government.
You are listening to The Last Frequency with hosts Michael Vera and Ryan Gable.
Well, hello out there in listening land. This is going to be take 2 of The Last Frequency. As you can tell by my voice, I am not Michael Vera. Unfortunately, Michael had to take tonight off, and so in his place, he asked me if I could run The Last Frequency for him tonight. There was a bit of problems today, and so he decided to take the night off, and we're okay with that. Not a problem at all. Hello out there again. My name is Ira Robinson, and I have with me Ryan Gable. Ryan, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me okay this time?
Yes, indeed.
Take 2.
Take 2 worked. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. It feels really good to be back. I'm just now getting back into the swing of things, if you will, in terms of researching and reading and writing and preparing the radio show. I've been off The Last Frequency for 2 or 3 weeks now. I even missed one episode of The Secret Teachings. But I think it was really great. About a week ago, you and I were able to record a news segment for last week's show, and you joined me for all 3 hours of my show this week, which will air Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on L&M. And I think we really developed a good chemistry. And I think it's another kind of a blessing that we're going to get to do this tonight, because this is going to help build our chemistry, which is going to be good for your show, my show, and the L&M network in general, that we can all kind of work so closely together and get along so well.
Absolutely. I love talking to you, and I definitely think that the two of us have a real good collaboration together. We tend to have come at things from the same background, I guess you could say. The same sort of topics have interested us over the years. You come at things from a really good knowledge base, and I love all of the incredible library of information you have in your brain, and I love to pick at it. So,
listen, the feeling's mutual for that, because I think both of us have a great deal of information that we have in our little libraries, if you will. And at the same time, we both come at it from a very similar, not necessarily the exact same, but a very similar yet different approach. And I think that puts a really interesting spin on some of the stuff that we discuss.
Absolutely. I love it myself. So for those of you out there in listening land, tonight we were supposed to have a guest on. It was Dr. Layla Ali, I think it was her name, right?
I believe so, yes.
She ended up having to back out tonight. I'm not sure exactly why, but she ended up having to back out tonight. So unfortunately, we're not going to have a guest. However, Ryan and I do have a plethora of topics to talk about, and we would like to kind of dive right in, I think, into those topics. The first one that I guess ran across that really hit me was one that I spoke about a little bit earlier on my show. If you guys are out there and you've listened to my show, Open Eyes, which airs here on the Late Night in the Midlands network as well, I talked about how the White House now is rejecting requests for the Freedom of Information Act that comes into the White House, the Office of Accountability, basically. So what this office covers is specifically things like the emails that go into and out of the White House, the guest lists that are there in and out of the White House, and so forth. So under the Freedom of Information Act, we were previously able to get information about the things that go on within that Office of Accountability. Now they are going to reject any and all requests that come into that. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Well, I haven't read much on it, but I saw the little bit that you had typed me on Skype about that situation. First of all, I want to know from what you've read about it, why are they shutting down the FOIA?
From what I can tell, it's basically because they want to do it under the auspices of national security because of emails that might be sent to the White House that would contain sensitive information and so forth.
You know, what's really funny about that gets me is that they always say, I say they in quotations, those in perceived positions of power that believe they have the right to tell everybody else what to do. These people constantly claim things such as security and safety, and if you give up a little bit of your freedom, you'll get safety and you'll feel a lot more safe and a lot more secure. They always use that term, national, and the term security, and they put it together and you think national security, we're trying to protect the nation. Well, what really doesn't make any sense to me is that the more and more that these people claim that things are being done under the guise of protecting the people, under safety and protection from terrorism, and all under the guise of national security, the more and more it seems that they need to claim that they need to conceal information under the guise of national security. So if the first 25 times this happened where they claim they need to shut down the FOIA, or they need to shut down parts of the internet, or they need to restrict the flow of certain types of maybe like legalized drugs that can cure different types of elements that are outside of the mainstream pharmaceutical drugs. Whatever the case may be, they have to shut down free energy research under the guise of national security. That's a real thing that's happened dozens of times. I've got plenty of stories. They keep doing it under the guise of national security, and yet every time it's done under the guise of national security, there seems to be another instance where we need to implement more national security guidelines. It doesn't make any sense to me, because when I look at it, I feel like, well, if we're implementing all of this protection under national security, why do we have to keep implementing more and more and more? Wouldn't you think that by doing it a couple of times that it would kind of eliminate any threat to national security? It's all backwards to me. And it's funny because the Heimat in Germany, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, was Hitler's national security, essentially the homeland security that they created after the Reichstag was burnt down in 1933. It's the exact same scenario playing out. Now, whether or not you believe, as an individual, as a researcher, as a person, male or female, doesn't matter, that the way in which the United States, the structure of the system, socially, economically, in every way, shape, and form, is heading down that same road of tyranny, well, you've got two things working against you. One, the facts, or the truth, and two, history. History repeats itself. And when you see this government that we have right now following in the exact same, not similar, not parallel, the exact same path, the exact same orders, the exact same rules that are being established within this country that were followed in both fascist Italy, communist China, Soviet Russia, and Nazi Germany. We're watching a tyrannical system, the likes of which was never existent in the world, in my opinion, because of the surveillance technology that exists today, that's being established all under the guise of national security.
Oh, absolutely. You take the situation where the SS would go around asking for papers, and instead of that, nowadays you have cameras everywhere that are looking at the papers, being able to facially recognize everybody that walks down the streets. Now. Exactly. There you go. And that's exactly the same. And is it really any surprise? I mean, we know that so many of the Nazi scientists and so many of the people that were responsible for setting up all of the different administrations that were within the Nazi Party within Germany itself during World War II. All of those people were brought here to America, brought to Russia, spread around NATO, spread around all of the allies, basically. And that basically now, instead of them doing it in Germany, they're now basically implementing their idealism into these other countries without the use of violence, essentially. Yes, they're doing it in a subtle way, but they're still turning us into this fascist state, which is what their goal was.
You have no other proof than to just look at history. This is the same country, and when I say country, it's not collectively the citizens. It's not collectively every single congressman, every single senator, every single advisor, every president, every vice president, and so on and so forth. It's just a very, very select few, and that just kind of goes up a ladder of authority. And certain people at the very top of the ladder, they have the authority to make certain, decrees, laws. They have, the ability to basically do whatever they want. And the people that are lower down on the totem pole, if you will, or lower down on the ladder, don't necessarily have the ability or don't necessarily have the power and don't necessarily know what's going on in the upper echelon. So it's not every single person, but what we have in this country, it seems, when we see things such as, like the shutting down of certain aspects of the internet, and that was over a year ago, Obama signed over the last remaining freedoms of the internet to the United Nations, something that I found was strange because a couple of years ago when I first spoke about it on my show, and others did too, we were told that you're crazy, that's never going to happen, that American people will never allow that. Well, I don't know when it's going to become a time people are going to realize that the American people really have no say, that the illusion that is democracy is just that, it's an illusion. I mean, in my opinion, Ira, there is no democracy, there is no freedom, there are no rights. All of it is just a perception of what we would like to think we have so that we can dilute and trick ourselves into believing that we're not living in a tyrannical state. Like I'm reading something right now, bring up by the Associated Press, that Obama now is speaking of mandatory voting that they want to implement, where all American citizens will have to vote. Now, again, all of these policies don't necessarily on the surface seem like something that's negative. So you say, well, we're going to give everybody free health care. Seems like a great idea. Well, somebody has to pay for it. Nothing is free. And when you make an argument against whatever the established order says, the established order, Republican or Democrat, just kind of toss you in terms of it like an ad hominem argument. They toss you back and forth between the opposition. So if you're a Republican or not a Republican, let's say that you have no political affiliation and you disagree with the Democrat, well, you must be a Republican, and therefore you're subjected to all of the negative and positive aspects of that particular group. And the same thing is if you disagree with a Republican, you must be a Democrat. And if you stand up and say, I disagree with both, and I disagree with being a libertarian, then all of a sudden you're a domestic terrorist and you don't fit in with any category. I just see an onslaught that has come out recently, Ira. Every single day it's something new, forceful policies, and people are just sitting back, watching it happen. And I don't think it's something that we can truly I honestly don't believe, Ira, that we can actually take control of this the way that it is. I think it's something that has to play out historically, and things are going to be really nasty. They're going to continue to get nasty until this just completely falls apart. And once those people who have made all of these policies, the companies and corporations that suck this nation dry, once they're done and the leech is fed, everything will fall, everything will collapse, and freedom, if you will start over anew somewhere else in the world. I know that's more of a long-term picture, but personally, I see that's how things are going, and we can make a difference. We can make a change. That's what you do with your show. That's what I do with my show. We're making a difference because if it wasn't people for us, Ira, how many people would really, honestly, even be remotely open to the possibilities that we're discussing? And they're not even possibilities in the sense that they might happen. A lot of this is stuff that we're saying is going to happen, not because we're predicting it, but because we can just follow past trends and patterns historically and watch it play out in the present. We can all make a difference, but I think what's happening now is something that's gone on for far too long. There's not really anything we can do about it in the short term, but in the long term, we keep informing people, and eventually those seeds of truth will begin to grow, as opposed to sitting back, being quiet, being docile, being apathetic, being lethargic, and allowing the seeds of deception to continue to grow until we're living in a version of Orwell's 1984 that is far beyond anything that Orwell could have imagined.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you look through the cycle of history, the things that are going on in this country have happened so many times before. You know, again, look at Nazi Germany. What happened during that time period and what happened in that country is very much a football play kind of thing going on. You know, they're looking at the book and they're seeing exactly what they can do with it.
That's what it seems like, doesn't it?
It does. You look back even further into the past and you see that the exact same things happened during the ancient Roman time period. The fall of ancient Rome follows the exact same pathways that the fall of America has been happening, you know, or has been following, I should say. And this is a real big warning system to people. The cycle of history is there. You know, it's no joke when people say that history repeats itself. Not only is it because people forget the history and don't understand it, but also because time itself kind of is cyclical, I think. At least to me, that's what I've seen. You have energy levels that rise and fall over time periods, you know, over vast periods of time. These energy levels, they cause the fall of nations. They cause the rise of nations. They cause the individuals to stand up or to sit down, you know, where there's more suppression or less suppression and so forth. You see this in every country around the world throughout all of history. You see it in ancient Egypt. They had the exact same things during their time period where they had this beginning where they were very slow and steady rise upwards. They had, you know, many different social programs that they had enacted. They had all of the great works that they did. And then they started to get to a point where the empire was so large and so unwieldy that it fell in upon itself. It collapsed upon itself. The same thing happened in ancient Rome, and we're seeing the same thing happen right now. The expansionism of America. We're all over the world doing all of these different things. We're not concerned about what's happening here within our own country. We're opening our borders wide open while having everybody under the impact or the auspices of national security, you know, and it's just insanity. And again, people just don't understand the history, and so they don't see that this stuff is what is coming. You look at the fall of ancient Rome again, and that is exactly the playbook that is going to be happening here in America if we don't do something to stop it.
You're right. And the thing that really, I think, gets to me is that I may not be able to remember every news story I read, every history book that I read, every textbook I read, every novel I read, everything that I read and research and do. I may not always be able to pronounce people's names right or be able to, you know, and if it's a foreign word, be able to pronounce it with the proper kind of a accent. And people tend to use that if they oppose us and say, oh, you didn't pronounce it right, you don't know what you're talking about. But putting all that to the side, at the very least, simply being open to what we're discussing about these topics, history in particular, and just kind of having an open mind to not being weighed down by the I say mainstream, but it's more like the mainline versions of what is socially seen to be acceptable in terms of language, in terms of what you can and can't say when you're out in public, just little tiny things up to the biggest possible social things that are considered normal or not normal. While we kind of work ourselves into this this hazy dark pathway that we seem to be going down, there's a lot of us. And this is, I guess, the positive side of this, Ira. There's a lot of us who have, as your radio show is, opened our eyes, and we've begun to see down that path of light. We've begun to see that, yes, things are really bad right now. And yes, it's not necessarily an ultimatum, but if we don't do something, things are going to get worse. But even at the end of the day, as things get really, really bad, they're going to get better someday. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that we sit back and say, oh, well, if they're going to get better someday, why not we just sit back and not do anything about it and wait till that day comes? The problem is, in order to get to the day that is more positive and more lit, if you will, on the path. We have to do something about this now. Again, back to what I said a moment ago, that's why radio shows like yours and mine and Michael's are important, because we have to kind of pave the way for those who are in the mass majority and who don't necessarily have time to sit down and put two and two together. I mean, not even necessarily reading news, because a lot of people read news and they believe it to be exactly whatever the news story says. That's exactly what happened. And I get accused of promoting news stories on my show. People will say, "Oh, I get emails before. Oh, you promote these news stories from the Associated Press and Fox News. You must be a Republican." I say, no, I'm just using the news story to discuss a topic. We're looking at the news and taking it and showing you from historical record, if you will, or historical context, how what's going to happen in the future is going to come out of what's being presented today. So when you see things like mandatory voting, it seems like it's a good idea today. In the future, that's going to lead to something much more tyrannical. What they're trying to do is coerce the entire population into like a one-size-fits-all system, which is kind of the opposite of what America is supposed to be about anyway. It's just like when you hear America's a Christian nation. Well, no, it shouldn't be a Christian nation. I thought the nation was founded on basically freedom of religious expression, not freedom of Christian expression and elimination of anybody who disagrees with you. The origins of what I was taught about how this country was formed is drastically different in terms of the way things are run today. And I know a lot of people think that this is a wild out conspiracy theory, Ira, but I'll tell you what, it seems to me that the only conspiracy that exists is the forming, or the illusion that exists is the forming of what we call the United States of America. I am beginning to more and more feel like that this whole thing is a ruse, and we've got proof. I mean, it's not even like a theory. We've got absolute proof that this country is still run by the crown of Britain, and that power system and that power structure and those bloodlines go right back to the very beginning of recorded man. And that's when this whole story gets a little bit more complex and a little bit more detailed. So I guess when we talk about this, we have to kind of be careful how far we go into the rabbit hole, because you can get people to understand, hey, mandatory voting, that might not be a good idea. But then when you follow the rabbit hole back and start talking about bloodlines and things, I think it loses people a little bit. So we've got to feed them little pieces of information and allow them to water those seeds themselves until they grow into something that they can use. I saw, speaking of religion, I saw something here that you sent me, and then I had found it on the Daily Mail. You were going to ask me, but I want to ask you what you thought of this. It says, "That's not very Christian. Cathedral ordered to remove inhumane anti-homeless sprinkler system that pours gallons of water over drifters." It's a cathedral in San Francisco, Ira, that's been ordered to take down a sprinkler system that they've used to deter homeless people from sleeping under the porchways. What do you think about that?
Well, the thing that comes to my mind with that, and from my speaking to you before, and for those of you who out there who don't know and understand, I come from a very deep Christian background. I'm no longer a professing Christian. I'm spiritual. I'm not religious in any way at this point in time.
Well, if I may, Ira, what you're talking about then is the actual true Christianity, not the distorted political version that we have today. You're talking about true gnosis.
Right, precisely. With the words that Christ said, which most people who are professing Christians, and let me clarify again, when I speak of Christians that are like this, they are not Christians. That is not what they are. They are not following the pathway that was laid out for them by the documents that we currently have, and by the knowledge that was seeded by Christ. Okay, so they're just wearing the suit and the tie, but they were not invited to the party. They're the ones that Christ himself said in let's see, it was Matthew, I believe, chapter 27, or 24, if I remember correctly. Anyways, said, "These are the people who will come to me and say, 'Lord, Lord, didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do good works in your name?' And he says, 'Go away from me, I never knew you.'" That is exactly what these quote unquote Christians, these people that are in this position of power in this cathedral, this is what they're acting like. They are not the Christians. They are the Pharisees and the scribes that Christ actually was blatantly and vehemently opposed to. The only people that he ever got verbally violent with were the Pharisees and the scribes, and the only people that he ever got physically violent with were the bankers. So,
isn't that true?
So that's my take on it. I will take it from the Christian perspective of things and say these people are not Christian. These people are there basically as prophets for profit. That's what it comes down to.
Right? And that's the name of my new book, The False Prophets, Profits, False Prophets. That's what this is. These people are the false prophets. And what's really incredible to me is that the ones that claim that they're Christian, I mean, Christianity really gets picked on. I say unfortunately because the religion itself is a very spiritual has a very spiritual side to it that is kind of was at least during its first creation before it was politicized, was like a culmination of multiple different kind of mystery schools and religions that were all tied in with one that kind of gave the average person a better understanding of the more complexities of the universe, but in a very simplistic manner. Yet it was taken and it was distorted so that the people who truly believe that what they are worshiping is the one divine being, it's actually the very opposite of that. And I've explained that on my show. I've explained that in my book before. It's funny because the symbols of Christianity and the origins of a lot of what we have today in terms of what's mainstream actually is more in relationship to the modern day version of Satan than it is the modern day version of what we call Christ. When I see stories like this, it's just lots of things come to mind. First of all, this does not seem, in terms of religion, I put that to the side. What this sounds like is governmental. Down in Orlando, where I used to live, they have the Orange County Courthouse where that Judge Belvin Perry works at the very top in his penthouse suite, the guy that presided over the Casey Anthony trial. This guy enacted all kinds of ordinances against the homeless. And I was right there in the city. This is nothing I read in the news. I experienced all of this firsthand. They had laws against bathing in the water. Like, of course, I don't necessarily want to see anybody get naked and get in the water down at the lake. But at the same time, you can't use the water at the lake if you're homeless. You can't sleep or sit on a bench. Listen, you can't sit on a bench if you're homeless. You can't be in the bathroom if you're homeless, a public bathroom at the park. You can't, on top of being homeless, you can't go to the courthouse or anywhere on public property and speak your opinion, your thoughts, your views, unless you're standing within the free speech box. These are not any type of religious dogmas or it's all governmental control. And it proves my point that once again, that what we have is a mainstream religious dogma, not just in Christianity, Catholicism and Islam and all the rest that are grouped in together, with their organizations making billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on all kinds of things, from child trafficking to drug running to just plain old confession plates or donation plates, rather. All of that is really the lack of separation of church and state. And I think it's really important to understand that the church is the state, that the state is the church. They are one and the same, Ira.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not trying to bash anybody's religion or anything like that. Religion does have its place, but religion is not spirituality, is what it comes down to. If you're following a dogma and you are going through the rote and the repetition and the indoctrination, that's not really spirituality. Spirituality is a flowering. It's an outpouring. It's a constant growth of yourself and your ability to communicate with God, to commune with God, to be one with God, and to understand that this place that we're in is not the reality that is real. It's only an illusion, that's all it is.
Isn't this, if you truly begin to break down not any individual, but just the basis of what a religion is, going back a couple thousand years to the Orphic mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries, I can't ever pronounce that right, the Greek mysteries, the Roman mysteries, the schools, they were originally established to give people who, the profane, the people that were not necessarily, that enlightened, to give them the opportunity, if they so chose, to gain a higher knowledge, to achieve a higher understanding, to achieve that gnosis, if you will, of what reality really is, of what their place is in the universe. And these are what the mystery schools were all about. The problem is, as those mystery schools kind of came into the public light, there are those who took advantage of them, claiming that they concealed some type of grand secret, and the grand secret is that there is no secret. It's all just a big pyramid scheme almost, ironically. And they were able to take those belief systems and the fear and the paranoia, but also the hope and the want of a reward for following orders from a hierarchical authority, taken that and they've established institutionalized religions under the guise of God, under the guise of spirituality, when in fact it's the very opposite. And when in fact, instead of serving the spiritual needs of the people, it serves the financial commerce needs, or wants rather, of the political institutions. And yes, they use those kind of dogmatic belief systems and the fear of going to hell and the reward of going to heaven, the punishment of going to hell, the reward of going to heaven, in order to keep people in line. And it's really funny because if you look at the way that things have been socially set up right now, Ira, I just moved into a new apartment and I've got my whole radio thing set up, and I'm finally in a place now where I can put up all my photographs, and I can put up all of my I got statues of Anubis and Isis and the god Mithra, and it looks really cool. And I start looking around at all of these things, and I think, if someone walked into my apartment and they looked at the books I had and they looked at some of the symbols I had, they would think automatically by reflex action that I'm either a witch or that I'm a Satanist, or they might think pagan, but then they would also think pagan is Satanism. And the reason that people think that about symbols such as the pentagram or the pentacle, or they think that about different statues of, let's say, Isis or Anubis, because Anubis looks kind of evil because he's a jackal-headed deity. They look at those symbols and they immediately think the negative. Now, that's not because they've looked at them, they've observed them, and they've perceived them the way they should be perceived. They're perceiving them the way they've been programmed to perceive them. So what mainline religious institutions have done, in particular the Catholic Church, has taken their beliefs and their rituals. Literally, the Catholic Church is based on different rites such as Mithraism. I mean, hell, St. Peter's Basilica is even built on an old Mithric sacrificial hill in Rome.
Yes.
The old priests of Mithraism used to be called the Popple. I mean, put two and two together for me, please.
Yeah.
When you look at this, and I'll stop ranting in a second, those institutions took the ancient mysteries, they stole what they wanted, they changed the story, they altered it, they distorted it, they manipulated it, sold it back to the people at a cheaper price mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The people bought it. And then, in order to eliminate the proof that they stole it, they've went ahead and taken all of the origins where they got all of their information and their symbols and their stories, and they've demonized it, and they've claimed that the pentagram, all these statues, it's all the work of the devil. Follow the one true God. Put on your fish hat and bow down.
Yeah, precisely. They claim that these things are the demonic symbols, and you shouldn't look at them and all of that kind of stuff. But they're just they do that as a way to, number one, like you were just saying there, to hide the actual truth of things, to hide the fact that they are doing it. But they'll put this out and they'll say, okay, well, this is the things that you should not be looking at, because they want to have that superiorituality, that superior spirituality. They think that what they have is what goes, and that just because they have the ability to read the text, just because they have the texts on hand, ooh, I have a secret, and you don't need to know the secret. You're not ready to hear it. But for the cheap price of $39.95, I'll let you in on the secret. That's what it comes down to. Plenary indulgence, right? That was the whole issue of people dying and going into limbo, and you could buy them out of limbo, right?
Fantastic. What a deal.
It's a great deal. And so people would spend exorbitant amounts of money to buy their relatives out of limbo, out of purgatory, so that they would not be trapped there until the end of time, essentially, so that they could be released and go to heaven. And this is what they were taught. This is what they were taught by the Catholic Church. Now, of course, you don't see that as much now, because people have had their eyes, quote unquote, opened, but it's just done in a different way now. Nowadays, you have the thing where you have to give your 10%. You have to tithe into the church. And if you don't tithe into the church, then you are frowned upon. You're looked upon as being a problem child, so to speak. I've actually been to churches where they will require you to give them your W-2s every year to make sure that you have tithed your 10% to the church.
It's a new one for me, Ira. I've never heard that before.
You've never heard? Oh, I've been to churches that are like that, and it's crazy when you get down to it. And people still fall right into line and follow this kind of thinking. But then when you get down to actually reading the texts, which people don't do, they just follow what their preacher is telling them to do or what their priest is telling them to do. They're not actually doing the work themselves. They're basically, it's what I call Twinkie it's cafeteria Christianity is what it comes down to. You pick and choose the types of things that you want to follow or the things that you are being taught. And so your pastor will come up to you and say, okay, well, that Jell-O over there looks pretty good. Go ahead and grab that, but ignore the fish sandwich today. It's a little off.
Religious buffets.
Religious buffets, exactly. There you go. Cafeteria Christianity. That's a term that I've used for a lot of years to describe how a lot of the people who claim to be spiritual act and react. And you see the same thing also in the New Ageism, the whole New Age movement.
It's terrible.
It goes on there, and it's rife in the New Age culture. It is terribly
Well, there's so many charlatans, I'd say even more so, outside of mainstream religions in terms of what's become New Age. There are so many more charlatans in that. It's incredible because I at one point was filtered through that as I kind of went through my awakening. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And it's really disheartening because a lot of what we're talking about nowadays, if it doesn't get branded with, being a heretic or a terrorist, it gets branded with devil worship. And it's just, to me, Ira, I sat here and I don't even have any words. I just have to shake my head because if you sat down with somebody and you really explain to them what a particular symbol or what a particular image actually means, yeah, they're still going to reject it. But when you do that, you plant a seed of truth, I think, and it begins to grow over time. Now, let me just say, and I think you'll agree with me here, stop me if I'm wrong, that a lot of what we're discussing can kind of seem negative, but the positive to this is that in order to discover what we call the truth, and Ira, you don't have the truth, I don't have the truth. The truth is something we're always looking for. We're always seeking that truth, as Manly P. Hall said, the truth seeker. So what I see is that what we're discussing might seem negative, but what we're discussing is also very positive, because if we can come to the realization that we've been deceived and that we've been lied to about not only symbols and statues and images and things like that, but just about the basic understanding of the nature of reality and human existence, we can really begin to break those chains simply by refusing to conform to them, simply by refusing to acknowledge their existence. And when we do that, when we refuse to acknowledge, we refuse to participate, they become obsolete. They no longer have functionality. If every single person who donated to church immediately, with realizing all at once that it was all a big ruse, the church would lose absolutely so much money. They'd have to create some type of public image of a new crucifixion. Oh my God, Jesus returned. We need more money to give Jesus a nice house. I mean, all of this is the complete opposite of Jesus's teachings. And for those who actually, just incredible, Ira, excuse me if I sound like I'm getting angry. For those who actually go to any church, and you donate money, and you claim that whether it's Jesus or some New Age ascended master or anybody else, that these people that have ascended time and space, they've ascended into the afterlife, they've resurrected and saved you and your family and all of humanity from the darkness of night, which are actually, these are allegorical sun myths and they're not literal stories, but just going with it for a moment. And you do that and you donate all your money, and then you sit down and you read the stories about somebody like Jesus, who is basically homeless, basically unclothed, raggedy, long beard, has little to nothing to eat, and then you're sitting there thinking, well, even though this guy's Jesus is basically a homeless person. Is basically to me that's what
absolutely.
I see. Jesus is a homeless person.
Yes, itinerant preacher is what it comes down to. Yeah,
exactly. And what are these people doing? The preachers that have a Bentley and a multi-million-dollar mansion. The churches, Ira. Oh my goodness! If you drive around. I've been across the country recently, and every single city I go to, even before I traveled across the country, churches are absolutely enormous, and they're getting bigger.
Oh, yeah. You go to some of these mega churches, and they make more money in a year than some small towns do. They make literally millions a year, and it's just absolutely disgusting to watch and see this stuff happening. I mean, a great example, we live here in a town, it's in Indiana. We're known as the city of churches and bars. We have one church on every corner and a bar on the other corner. Literally in this town, it's the city of churches and bars, and you see so many of those churches here that are just gigantic. I mean, they are huge. They have tens of thousands of people coming into them every week, and they just handed money hand over fist. I mean, there are some that have McDonald's and Subways in them. You know?
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not joking with you.
See, there's another one. These people talk about, we got to protect our temples and our bodies. First of all, that's very Masonic in nature. That goes back to the Nazarenes and the Essenes who wore the white robes, that of which the Templars spawned from, in a sense, or at least their ideology. They have no clue what this truly means. Not that I do, but I think I have a better understanding than those who go and tithe their money. You know, it's just two things. If you go donate money like that, or at least believe that it's something that you should do because God thinks you should do it, and then you go back and read the text and you see Jesus is basically a homeless person, you're working with a type of cognitive dissonance, first of all. Second of all, when we have a situation like you're telling me there's like a Subway in a church, and these churches are making billions and billions of dollars, and they don't pay taxes, there's something fundamentally wrong here. People are working within a system where they actually it's like George Carlin said. I remember what George Carlin was the famous quote he's talking about. People have actually been convinced that there's an invisible man sits in the clouds,
He's
right?
up in the clouds. But he loves you.
Every second of every day, yes. He's got a list of 10 things he does not want you to do. I mean, it's not just like the Catholic churches. It's Christian churches, Baptist churches, it's Mormon churches, it's churches of Scientology, it's mosques. All of them are the exact same way. They have been established. Their origins are very rooted in the same location, and they've all been established to make money, and they've deceived the congregation to a point that is just unbelievable for this time and day, where so much information is available at our fingertips. We'd rather sit and watch YouTube videos of whatever, rather than maybe just once in a while doing a little research. And you know what's ironic about this, Ira, is this kind of goes back to what we started talking about today in terms of social conditioning and in terms of political rhetoric, is that people have been literally so conditioned for so long, especially here in this country, that they actually believe that they are better than other people in the world. Like human beings in this country actually believe, because they were born 30 miles south of the Canadian border in the United States, that they are better than anybody born in Canada, or 50 miles north of those born in Mexico, they are better than people born in Mexico. That's the mentality that we have. So of course, when you have that mentality and you think that you're special and you think that you're an elite and you think that you're better than everybody else, you're never going to believe anything bad could happen, because you've been conditioned to believe everything contrary to that.
My daughter just said, God must have a ton of eyes to be able to see everybody like that, or one big eye like a Cyclops, or otherwise God Clops.
And it's probably pretty busy on Sunday. All those people, emailing him and messaging him, asking for shit.
Absolutely, yes. And you're right. The fact is that we really have been lied to and deceived all along when it comes to the whole thing, as far as religion goes, as far as the origins of it all, as far as even just the origins of us. Period. The symbolism. We're told the actual opposite of what the symbols mean. A great example is. Well, you take the swastika for an example. That was co-opted by the Nazi Party, when originally it was symbolic of life and just unity, and what happened? Now it's this evil symbol that if you look upon it, you're going to have your eyes instantly burned out and go to hell.
Is that what happens?
I think so. Isn't that what happened in Raiders of the Lost Ark? Yeah. Oh wait, no, that was the Ark. But that's how it is, and yet we're told that this is the right thing, that we're foolish for thinking anything otherwise.
What is the swastika if not a cross with bent edges?
Precisely. It's all the symbolism is there. I know you're big as far as symbolic things goes, and the synchromysticism and all of that kind of stuff. And people, I guess you could say that if you want to go a biblical term of things, my people perish for lack of knowledge. That's what it comes down to. The lack of knowledge of what Christ himself stood for, right? At least in the stories that have been passed down to us. The idealism that he had. He was a servant. He washed his disciples' feet. He was there as a servant, not as a master, not as this figure that's looking over you and saying, you must do this and you must do this. The only message that he had when it came down to it is, number one, the kingdom of God is within you. Right now, right here, no strings attached. The kingdom of God is within you. That's the good news. That's the gospel. That's it, and that's all. Nothing else is needed. Nothing else was needed. That's the only thing that mattered. The kingdom of God is within you right here, right now. Not for one man, not for some people, not for a group of people, not for those who accept, not for those who reject, for all people. In the Bible, it says all men will be saved. All people will be saved. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So all of the other extraneous crap that gets attached to it is there by man. That is not the message that is there. Everybody seems to focus on the writings of Paul, right? Who was once a Pharisee, correct? Well, they focus on that as their objective of Christianity, and they ignore completely the words of the master that they're supposedly following. And it just drives me nuts.
I can hear your frustration. Nothing better sums up religious fanaticism and mainstream religious ideologies and dogmas better than this symbol called the Globus Cruciger. Are you familiar with this symbol?
I'm not sure. Not offhand.
So if you are on the internet, you type in Globus Cruciger. It's Globus space Cruciger. Or if you have my book, The Grand Illusion, it's in chapter 3 on page 30, or chapter 2 on page 37. The Globus Cruciger is basically, and you've seen it, it's on a lot of royal staffs, and it's all over the Vatican. It is a globe with a cross on top. And
okay. I saw it. Yeah, I know exactly which one you're meaning now.
Okay, right. So it's the globe represents Earth, pretty simple, and the cross, pretty simple, represents the church. The symbol that's used by the church stands as a symbolic representation of the church's dominion over the earth. The church has literally put itself in symbolic terms above the earth and above man. There are also, I guess you could call them kind of like an ordinance that's given out by like judges and whatnot, like Belvin Perry in Orlando. I think it's called Unum Sanctum, which was like written by I guess I forget what pope, and even in what year. It was over probably 100 years ago. But this decree basically states that no salvation. I'm going to pull it up so I don't sound like I'm completely incompetent here, Ira. I'm going to go pull it up. But Unum Sanctum basically says that the church is the only place that you can obtain salvation. You can't find it within yourself. You're not going to find it by going to a guru or by meditating. You find salvation by pledging yourself to the church. And through the church, then, by default, the only way that you can get to heaven through the church is by going through the head of the church, which is not Jesus, but the Pope. I mean, to think that that's actually something that is written down in Vatican law, that this is what people believe, that the only way that they can obtain salvation is through a man-made, idealistic, physical construct, is far beyond my understanding and just blows my mind, Ira.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Pope Boniface the Eighth in 1302 that was
1302, so way over 100 years ago.
Yeah. So. And you're right. And if you look actually on a lot of the Protestant churches that are out there right now, they have their own version of that, where there's you look at the spires that are on a lot of the churches now. You see the cross on this big spire that's there, and underneath it, it's not a globe. It's actually mostly of a square, but the square is a representation of a globe, correct? Because the circle fits within the square. So when you see a square, it's also representing a circle at the same time. That's just a different layer of symbology for you guys out there. But it's the same thing. They have that there still. So for them, they still have that same idea in mind. And yet, if you go into the actual texts that are there that were handed down, the ones that were quote unquote accepted by the Catholic Church during the Council of Nicaea, if you read in there the words of Christ, for instance, he did not say that it's through the church that it is done. He said, "Take up your cross and follow me." That's it. Take up your cross and follow me. That's all it is. That's salvation. So, and you don't see that happening with people these days. They don't take up their cross. They do the lip service saying, "Yes, I accept Jesus Christ into my heart as my personal Lord and Savior." And they think, "Okay, I've been washed clean." But that's not it. The works are not there. The things are not there. They're not pushing themselves to grow spiritually. They're not pushing themselves to grow closer to God. Okay, not to get too far off topic here, but I gotta hit this because this is salient to the things that we're speaking about here. Okay, so you take the idea of forgiveness, right? So many of people that are out there that profess to be Christians try to say, "Oh, well, you have to forgive, and they pay lip service to the forgiveness idea. Well, the thing is, as far as forgiveness is concerned, if you look at the one prayer that was left down by Christ, says it's the Lord's Prayer. And in the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Forgive us this day our sins as we forgive others for their sins." And people just speak these words. And now listen, if this was the only prayer that was handed down by Christ, you would think that this is kind of an important one, right?
I would think so.
This might be kind of important to pay attention to, right? Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, what's not understood by 99% of the people that are out there is the wording that's used there actually is kind of a curse, if you think about it. Because what it says is, "God, please forgive me. Father, please forgive me for my sins in the same manner that I forgive other people. As I forgive other people." So in the same manner that you give forgiveness to somebody else, God is going to grant you forgiveness. If you're not forgiving somebody else, if you're paying lip service to the forgiveness that you're giving to somebody else, that's the same way that God is going to treat you. It's sort of a curse.
Or like karma.
Yes, it precisely is. And I think that is exactly what it was that was being taught right there. So I'm sorry, I had to go off on that, but this was like pressing on me to talk about. So
No. It makes plenty of sense. I'm glad you brought that up because it's really all about interpretation. And regardless of if it's a Jewish person, a Christian person, or whoever else, trying to, whether they're reading the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, it doesn't matter what it is, what religious text, it is so often interpreted incorrectly. And it's not even anybody's fault. It's just that it's written during a time where people spoke differently, people lived differently, people ate differently, people entertained themselves differently. So looking at it from a modern day context, it's nearly, I think, Ira, it's almost impossible to get a true understanding of what was meant in some of these religious writings.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of that. Not to interrupt you, but I'll give a great example of that. In the book of Acts, which is the last book basically that contains Christ, right? So in the book of Acts, one of the phrases that's used in there is to walk a compass. So to fetch a compass is the wording that's used, to fetch a compass. So when you read this these words in today's modern English, you would think, okay, well, to fetch a compass, I need to go get this item that can steer me in a direction, north, south, east, and west. It's this item that I can hold in my hand and therefore can lead me to where I need to go. However, the phrasing to fetch a compass in that time period actually meant to walk around in a circle, to walk a circuit. So the difference in the context, people read this and they think one direction, they think in one way, but it actually meant something completely different. And that happens so much when people try to interpret the Bible and the things that go on with it. And not just the Bible, but any really ancient texts. You have to consider all of the context. The texts were written for a specific people at a specific period in a specific time. And for us that are reading it, we have to understand that context that it was written in, or we are going to completely lose understanding of exactly what it meant to say.
No, you're exactly right, Ira. That's a really good example, a really good point. It would almost be, and again, I'm having to use my modern day understanding of the world, it would almost be like somebody from a very primitive culture who's never had any formal education as we see it, but they know how to survive, giving them a manual, if one exists, on how to build a jet airliner, and expecting them to understand it in the way that a technician would understand it. It's not going to happen. Giving somebody a religious text which is thousands of years old, which has been altered and changed, it's missing dozens and dozens of chapters, and the chapters that are included have been rewritten, distorted, rewritten, manipulated, and distorted again, and expecting them to understand it in the way in which it was originally intended is absolutely, I'd go as far as saying that it's next to impossible. You're not going to get the true understanding of what the texts say. And if you really want to, you gave a great example there. The last two examples you gave were really great. I wanted to go back to what you said about some churches having subways. Subways, right?
Yeah, Subways and McDonald's both.
Great, Jesus,
and a lot of them have Starbucks as well.
Starbucks. Oh, they brought the goddess to church.
Yes, exactly. There you go. The ISIS. Exactly.
They brought ISIS in there. Good deal. In terms of Subway, they brought the azobicarbonamides in there too. The yoga mat plastic. That sounds good. You want that with the wine and bread.
You got it.
Anyway, the Subway. I'm thinking of Subway, and I'm thinking that they've got a Subway in the church or any food like that in the church, and oh my goodness! You'll hear those who are religious, and I know I have to speak in generalities here, but I'm just trying to drive home a point. Who say we have to protect the body, the temple, our temples, our bodies. Well, kind of as a symbolic parallel representation, the body as a temple is in direct correlation to Masonic initiation, for example, the temple and the body, building a physical temple, and then your body as a temple, the parallel between the two. And a lot of these original sects, such like Jesus was part of the Nazarenes. Jesus of Nazareth was not necessarily the location he was from, but the particular, I don't want to say Masonic sect, but it's where a lot of the Masonic ideas came from.
Right, which was actually an offshoot of the Essenes as well, which is what Essenes. Mary came from. So
yes, exactly. Very royal and very wise, I believe.
Yes.
And they have this understanding of so much more than the average person. So if they were to say something, let's say you grab one of these guys, you put them in a time machine, you bring them to the present, and they make a comment such as the compass example you gave. We take that in a completely different direction nowadays. Hell, in a couple of years, the Bible might not even be written to say compass. It might be written to say Garmin or GPS.
Yeah.
That's where we have gone in terms of translation. Now, you say lip service a few minutes ago, and people pay lip service to so many incorrect statements or ideas or concepts or wordings that are in the biblical text, or just simply stories that have kind of been passed around as myth in relationship to certain religious beliefs and ideologies. And just like we're supposed to protect our temples and build our temples, and then these Christian people, whatever religious sect, they go to church, they hear that, and then they turn around, they go up to McDonald's in the entrance to the church, and then they eat that food, and they don't understand what it does to their body. Now, that being one thing said, moving on to another, those who pay lip service to, let's say, good deeds get you to heaven, right? You don't need to go to church as long as you do good things. Well, even that idea, it's really backwards, because the two words good and deeds, if you use that together in a sentence, that is a very, very, very simplistic, I don't even know if simplistic's the word, basic, low-level terminology to explain study and dedicated research, if you will. And that's even a more simplistic way that you could describe things such as obtaining gnosis or knowledge and wisdom. So when people say that good deeds get you to heaven, and they think, well, if I make the I make something for the church bake sale, if I give the homeless guy on the street $1, which, by the way, if you want to help the homeless, give them some money and stop giving the church some money, or buy them some food. People that do this, and they think that just by helping grandma across the street, that gets them into heaven, it's not in the same context. When this was written, what is considered a good deed is not necessarily helping grandma across the street, although helping your neighbor is one of those concepts, again, that get distorted. But a good deed is also studying, research, being a good student. So much of this, Ira, has been misinterpreted on purpose and on accident. And even the ones that are on accident typically come from the misinterpretations that are done on purpose. And it just creates this snowball effect, and things completely get blown out of proportion very easily. I mean, Ira, I was told, did you go to Christian school or a religious school?
I did, yes, for 8 years. Lutheran.
Okay, what is it?
Lutheran specifically. And I was,
Lutheran.
Yeah, my mom was a Catholic. My dad was an atheist. They sent me to a Lutheran school, and we went to a Baptist church. I had a very diverse upbringing.
Beautiful. That is a very diverse upbringing. I went to a Baptist school too. Let's see if you can top this. I'm sure you might be able to. Who knows with that kind of an upbringing. I was taught, and I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating. This is really what I've been trying to think about this recently to try to get a list of things that I was taught in school about God. Here's one that I was literally taught about God. And it wasn't like it was an example that the teacher was telling me, but just think about this. Let's think, if I heard what I'm about to tell you, and I didn't wake up, and to my kids, I taught them the same thing. And years later, these kids pass down these same stories and these same ideas. It then becomes the messed up situation that we have now, just 10 times worse in a generation than we have nowadays. And this is 10 times worse than the last generation, all the way back to the origins of all of what we're discussing today. I was taught literally that if I did at one point, I forget what day, it was like during a weekday or something, if I didn't basically give my soul to Jesus immediately that day, Ira, that not only was I going to go to hell, which, once you learn about hell in school and you're like, 10 years old, and you're told that you're going to go to a place where you're going to burn, and a guy with horns with a pitchfork is going to abuse you for the rest of eternity, that's pretty scary. That's pretty psychologically damaging. Why are these people not rounded up and put in a mental ward? Why is the people who speak out against it?
Oh, yeah.
What is it?
Oh, I was just saying, oh, yeah, I agree on that 100%.
Right? I mean, we're like mentally abusing children with this. So I was taught that if you don't give your soul to Jesus, not only are you going to go to hell, but the reason you should do it immediately, like give your soul to Jesus right now, is because God, and they didn't use this word, but they said God is basically a broker. They explain God like a broker or a real estate agent. I don't know what the rules are in heaven for practicing real estate, but I guess God has a license. And he has the street paved with gold, which again is a material earth metal. I don't know why some spiritual being needs gold. And they got the pearly gates. And inside the pearly gates and the gold streets, there are apartments and condos. I was literally told this, Ira. Apartments and condos, and they're going quickly. So get yours now, and it only costs the down payment of one soul. I was literally taught that in Baptist school. What kind of messed up system is this that we literally teach our kids crazy ideas like that? And don't give me that crap that the people say, oh, well, Scientologists believe, they believe in hydrogen bombs and volcanoes and aliens and spaceships, and everybody gets their own planet. And I think, Okay, at least that's somewhat more modern. At least I don't have some naked woman talking to a snake. I don't have some naked woman who has never had sex giving birth to some child who is teaching the smartest people in the world by the age of 13. He's walking on water. He's turning water into wine. That seems like a pretty big myth to me. And it's the same thing if you put it in context. Look at the way those stories are told, with the way and the way those religions developed, with the way that religions like Scientology developed in a more modern day sense.
Yeah, and at least with Scientology, the guy who started it was honest. He said, L. Ron Hubbard in the 1930s said, the best way to make money, start a religion.
There you go.
And he did, anyway. And now he's made a lot of money. Yeah, anyways, go ahead.
Well, that's where I was going to end it. I was just going to kind of come around full circle and end it with what you said, is that putting it into a modern context, it makes a lot more sense, to me at least. I don't know. The base point is that it's all about interpretation. And at the same time, yes, you can't tell somebody that they're 100% incorrect for their beliefs that Eve talked to a talking snake. I can show in symbolic terms how that is representative of something entirely different. Like just, I don't know, Symbolism 101, the serpent crawling up the tree is not necessarily a physical serpent, but yet a representation symbolically in the Bible in terms of evolution and or creationism, one and the same, I think, just different versions, scientific and religious, of the snake crawling up the tree is symbolic of the human spine developing and human beings evolving into a more upright creature. Little things like that are completely lost on the congregation who is just waiting to get out of church because it's football season.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And actually, we need to catch a break here real quick. We've gone for actually over an hour at this point, which is really weird. I just noticed the time and it's like, whoa, okay, we got to take a break here.
That's what we do.
Yeah, we're good for that one, aren't we? So stick around with us, guys. We'll be back in just a few minutes after this break. The Late Night in the Midlands radio network is deeply devoted to you, the listener. We feel it is necessary to bring you all of the information that you can use in your life. Each and every day you will find something to listen to here. And whether you come away from the shows informed, inspired, or entertained, it is our passion. We don't bow to corporations, and we don't have handlers to tell us what not to talk about. We bring you everything. Late Night in the Midlands, however, is fully listener-supported. We need your help to stay on the air and to make sure that we get the bills paid. We need your help to keep the truth alive. If you feel that you have gotten anything out of Late Night in the Midlands, we would appreciate your support. You can become a subscriber and help us out on a monthly basis, or if you'd like, a one-time donation is fully appreciated as well. Every year, the average household in America spends over $3,000 on entertainment alone. If you could help us with just a tiny fraction of that amount, you would make all of the difference. Go to latenightinthemidlands.com and click on the subscribe button. Thank you, and as always, keep yourself informed.
Let me assure you that our priority will remain to ensure stability and security.
In order to ensure the security and continuing
stability, security for Canadians.
Galactic Empire!
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
They went into the homes now, the powers that be, and told us that you cannot discipline your children anymore. And if you discipline your children, you were going to jail. Then they went into the public schools and took discipline out of there. So when we acted up in there, they put our boys into something called special ed classes. And as you know, those special ed classes are nothing but holding cells until they can go to the state prison. If we can have them convicted for a felony, then once they get out of prison, they cannot get a job because of that. And then if they happen to eke out and find a job, then they have to pay taxes on a job, yet they cannot vote. I call that taxation without representation. They did a grand thing when they took that discipline away from us, because when they made our parents afraid to discipline the children, then what happened? We found out that the teachers were afraid of the principals were scared of the superintendents was scared of the school board was scared of the parents were scared of the children, and the children ain't scared of nobody.
So I want to challenge you all about what you think you know. You think that you're a human being and you know the way the world works, but I'm here to burst that bubble.
All of us are energy. A human being is a very complex pattern of energy.
The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward.
Much more important to teach children to question what they read. Children should be taught to question everything. Children should be taught to question authority. Parents never teach their children to question authority because parents are authority figures themselves.
Like it or not, for the moment, the earth is where we make our stand.
It's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love.
Because to be awoken means you're doing the work here to change this world right here in the now, where you're at now, from where you're at now.
The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one.
It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
But I'm exactly where I wanted to be because I realized I got to commit my very being to this thing. I gotta breathe it, I gotta eat it, I gotta sleep it. And until you get there, you'll never be successful in life. But once you get there, I guarantee you, the world is yours. The world is yours.
Well, hello there and welcome back. This is The Last Frequency. My name is Ira Robinson and I am here with Ryan Gable. Tonight, Michael had to take the night off, so we are the ones that are in control. I guess the crazies are running the asylum tonight, right, Ryan?
They are. They've been running the asylum here on Earth for a while, and we're our own set of crazies here. Isn't it kind of backwards that the people who claim that people like us are crazy are actually mentally insane themselves, and we're the ones who are actually very, very sane?
Absolutely, yes. You know, I know that you recently moved across the country, and on your episode that's coming up, I believe it's this Sunday, correct? You're gonna speak about the move. I'm actually on the episode with you. So if you guys want to tune in to that show, it'll be here on the LateNightInTheMidlands.com at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday night. I definitely recommend tuning in. It's a really good episode, I think, of your show, which your show is always awesome anyways. You can find Ryan's show at thesecretteachings.info. Definitely highly recommend going and listening to all of his archives. You will come away with a plethora of knowledge, to say the least.
Thank you, Ira.
You'd have no excuse for being ignorant after listening to your show for a while. Anyways,
maybe be a little bit angry.
Yeah, maybe that's a big possibility. But through anger actually comes a new awakening, because it causes chaos, right? And through a lot of times through chaos comes a new sort of shaping of order of things in your mind and in your life. You might go through that dark time period of the soul, that dark night of the soul, but by the time all is said and done, man, it is such a refreshing look to look around and say, man, I am so tired of being lied to.
Hey, that's right. That's what Dimitri, who used to do the show with me down in Orlando at the old radio station, the college station, WPRK, that's what he used to say to me when I first got into this, and he had been in it for a while and researching and doing the show as kind of just a way to vent. I say that everything we've ever been taught is a lie. Let's expose those lies for what they are. And I remember when we first did the documentary, because I don't know if you know, we actually, a couple classmates of mine who got on board with me, we did a documentary for documentary class at Full Sail, the film school, and that was one of the questions that we had asked Dimitri at the time at the radio station, was that, how do you feel? Doesn't this all kind of, make you angry that you've been lied to? And we spoke about it for a while, and on the documentary, I remember he said something along the lines of, at first it's really frustrating because you realize that, your parents, your teachers, everybody in your life, whether they've done it on purpose or they've done it, just simply because they have just been repeating what others have said, they've been feeding you lies from the second that you took your first breath to the moment when you realized that everything prior to that moment in particular was a lie. Absolutely incredible, because everything we have been taught, whether it's a product of direct manipulation or indirect manipulation, for the most part, Ira, has been a lie. And we tell little white lies every day and don't even realize it.
Yeah, you're right on that. And sometimes lying is useful. I kind of talk about the difference between morality and ethics. You take the idea of morality, and that's something that is taught to you through like society or through like religion or something like that, kind of not really wanting to get back onto that topic. But still, there's a difference, though, between morality and ethics. Morality is the case where you are taught by an external source that this is the way that things are supposed to be. So morality is something like, you will never do this, or you should not do this. This is something that is wrong. Ethics is something that is within yourself, and you say, I wouldn't do such a thing like that, so I'll never do such a thing like that. And sometimes those white lies, I guess you could say, are useful. Take an example of Nazi Germany. If you were in Nazi Germany and you had a set of Jews in your house, in your attic, that you were protecting, and a soldier came up to your door and said, "Are you hiding Jews here?" Morality says, if you're following, like, let's say the 10 Commandments, it says, don't lie under any circumstances. You will never lie. And if you do, you're going to be punished for it. However, ethics would say, if I tell a lie and say, no, I don't have any Jews here, I'm not only saving their life, but probably my own as well. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Sometimes those lies are useful and necessary, but when it comes to the idea of life here is something that is completely different than what we are taught, that's something that is beyond ethics, beyond the ethics of lying, I guess you could say.
I completely agree with you. Absolutely. I mean, I like to examine those kind of social quorums once in a while, because I think it's a great way to really get the conversation started about a lot, whether it's simply what we call bad language or, yes, the difference between ethics and morals. I think I've heard you speak about that before. We might have even spoken on the phone or Skype about that one time. That's a great discussion. It's a great argument to break that down. And, that's one of the traps we kind of fall into, is definitions and what they actually mean as opposed to what we're told that they mean. And we kind of go with an assumption of what others have said that certain words or terms or phrases mean. And back to the interpretations that we discussed in the first hour segment, everything is open to interpretation, and we usually base our interpretations on what authority figures have to say, or what people in perceived positions of authority or perceived positions of knowledge, with parents, teachers, police officers, whoever it might be. We think that, well, they must know what they're talking about, so I'll go with it. And we really don't take the time to do our own research to realize that there's a difference between things such as morality and ethics, that there's a difference between what's right and wrong in a religious sense as opposed to what's right and wrong in a social sense as opposed to what's right and wrong innately within your soul. It's really incredible, and it really keeps you up at night. I bet you'll agree with me on that, to sit down and think about these kinds of things.
Oh, it sure does. I spend hours trying to think of these different kind of topics and the methods that are going on, trying to break through some of that programming that I've had. Even if I'm sitting here with my eyes open to a lot of things, I'm still subject to a lot of the programming that I was raised with. And I know you feel the same way.
Me too, yeah.
Sometimes you have that knee-jerk reaction when a subject comes up or a topic comes up and you're like, oh, God, we can't talk. Oh, wait, never mind. I can talk about that,
and consciously, when I make that realization, that's when I kind of grab the proverbial bull by the horns and I take it down and I tie it up. And that's when I really go full force into a particular area of research, because when that happens and when that whatever topic it might be begins to get a lot of flack and a lot of negative feedback from people who just refuse to talk about it, then you've stumbled onto something that's very, very important, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you. That you're absolutely right. I call it the shadows. I kind of take a Jungian approach to things in philosophy when it comes to that sort of thing. They're shadows. The things that you can't face or the things that you won't face are going to build up within you. They're going to build up and they're going to bite you straight in the butt at some point in time, whether you like it or not. They're going to take control of you, and you're not going to have any choice in the matter. So if you just take the time and face it, just get it out of your system and let it go, then you're fine. The way that I look at things is you can actually thank these shadows. You can actually thank the troubles that you have, because they're teaching you lessons. They're there to help you to learn and expand yourself. That's kind of how I look at it. The shadows you can thank, because these are teaching you that, hey, you still have this inside of you. And this is something that you need to learn to let go of, or in your case, like you say, wrestle it down like a bull by the horns, And that's how I look at things, I guess you could say.
I don't, and I do like and don't like agreeing with you, because a lot of times it kind of gets boring when you just constantly agree with each other. But I agree with you on that too. That's how I see things. You're absolutely right. It's funny, as you say, that you take a Jungian approach. I didn't even know who Carl Jung was until a couple of years ago, and people had always told me, "Oh, you like philosophy. You speak a lot like Carl Jung. You should read his stuff. You get a lot of your information from him, I bet." And I said, no, I don't even know who Carl Jung is. And I still haven't, read a lot of Carl Jung or researched a lot on Carl Jung. I just find it interesting that a lot of what I tend to believe or what I tend to think, without doing, research or thoughts into philosophy, like sitting down and actually, I guess we're all kind of philosophers in our own sense, but not doing it in any type of, professional research way. I just find it incredible that what I tend to see in the world, how I perceive things, aligns with his perception of reality. It's really interesting to me, because I didn't even know who the guy was until a couple of years ago. It's kind of one of those confirmations that we're on the right path, I think.
Yeah, I kind of had the same experience. I came to these different ideas myself, and then ended up discovering him after the fact, and was like, oh, well, I guess that would be a good label for it then right there. People will understand it if you say it that way. Now, one thing that I wanted to speak about, and I'm not trying to get too far off topic, but I know that we have so many things that we want to cover tonight for the people that are out there. Yeah. Oh God, it's so hard to find one thing to speak about, right?
Just think, Ira, we thought about an hour and a half ago that we weren't going to have enough to speak about.
Oh man, you and I both have a problem of diarrhea at the mouth, I think, sometimes.
We do.
Anyways, you took this cross country trip, moving into this new location, and I know that one of the places that you stopped at was Dealey Plaza, where President Kennedy was assassinated. And you speak about that on your show this week with me, and I loved the conversation. I loved the things that you had to say in there.
Great show.
But one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about there, so I guess kind of giving a preview to people out there a little bit, one of the things that we didn't speak about was I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that you had happen while you were there. Now, how I look at things, and I'll kind of nutshell this as quickly as I can. I'll make it as short as I can. The way I look at things is, in the world, there are energy vortexes that can be created. They're these spaces of energy, basically, that kind of overwrite the energy in that area, or can change the focus of people's minds and that sort of thing. So I give an example of haunted houses, how a lot of people will move into a house that they perceive as being haunted. And let's say, for example, someone in the house killed somebody there. Like a father moves in with his family and he ends up getting drunk one night and kills his wife and his kids or something along those lines. Well, a family that moves in afterwards, their personalities will actually start to be warped and changed by the energy that's in that area. So it creates, as I say, I kind of term it as an energy vortex. The universal consciousness field, for lack of better words, is sort of shaped in this frame or in this format within this certain little zone. So I suspect that there is a large energy vortex that is there at Dealey Plaza, because not only of the event that happened there, but because of all of the energy that people have focused into this event. The world's eyes basically watched this, and they're still thinking and talking about it. And so this is a really large focal point for negative energy, essentially. So I'd like to get your take on what you felt while you were there. You're a perceptive guy, and I'd like to see maybe if you felt anything of that energy that was there, or kind of what your experiences were.
Well, absolutely, Ira. And this is I think it's a great story. I talked about my entire trip on Sunday's show, like you mentioned. It was a wild trip. I got stranded in Louisiana for a couple of days. I got some donations from people who helped me fix my car, and I want to say thanks to anybody who did donate, because that was tremendous. I didn't hardly have any money in terms of finances, so I was really, really struggling. As I moved on from Louisiana, I got to Texas, and I ended up going to Dealey Plaza because I drove right through Dallas. And I stopped at a Whole Foods, kind of like my little safe haven as I traveled across the country. And as I went across the country, though, even into Texas and later on past Dealey Plaza out into like the deserts of New Mexico, where there's no gas for 100 miles, you kind of realize something. And I made this realization very early on. It's so cool because, you see the rest. If you've never traveled, you see the rest of the country on television. You see it in movies. You see it in photographs. And when you get there, everything that you've ever seen in a documentary, in a Hollywood film, or again on television, TV show, it looks completely, in some ways, opposite. I mean, everything looks the same, but it looks completely opposite of what you thought it would look like when you saw it on television, of course. Everything looks different on TV. And you begin to realize, at least I did, that when you watch a movie, things that are made to look real are actually fake. Not to say that if something, a movie was shot in a particular location that things are fake, but the whole scenery, everything's kind of made up. It's a story. It's being shot. It's all made up. It's all fake. So in a movie, it's fake, but it looks real. In real life, it's real, but it looks fake. As I was traveling across the country, all these places I've never been, I've just seen pictures and seen on television. Everything that I was seeing, I thought it looks real, it looks fake, but it's real. And I thought that was really interesting because you think like that And at the same time, I can say, okay, like I go to Dealey Plaza, and I've seen this in documentaries, I've seen it in films, I've read about it in books, I've seen photographs in books, and I get there, and you expect it to be something different than it really is. I expected it to have a different feel to it than it did. Now, I'm not exactly sure what kind of energetic feel I had when I was there. I think I was there for about an hour and a half, maybe a few minutes shorter. But I can tell you this. When I went to the Georgia Guidestones in Georgia about 4 or 5 years ago, I had heard a lot about them too. I had read a lot about the Georgia Guidestones. I have myth and truths. Facts. I've seen a lot on television, a lot in movies. And when I got there, I felt a really strange energy. The best way to sum it up, it felt like a energy of deception, because I think the Georgia Guidestones are kind of like not a tourist attraction because they're out in the middle of nowhere, but they're just kind of just a distraction in general. Like there's no real significance to them. Now, I may be wrong. I'm not exactly sure. That's the kind of energetic feel I got when I was there. Well, as I got to Dallas and I was looking around the city, and I was trying to find where Dealey Plaza was, I ended up pulling off to the side of the road, literally 100 feet from the obelisk that was erected right next to where Kennedy was killed. And I was like, I can't find this place. I'm just going to drive through. I'm behind on time anyway. And then when I looked it up on the GPS, it said your destination is like 100 feet. So I looked up, and there was the obelisk. So another example there of how you're not really looking for something, or you are looking for something rather, and it could be staring you right in the face, and you're just not perceiving it properly. So when I got there and I looked around, I got a picture with the obelisk. I put that up at thesecretteachings.info. It's cut into 14 pieces, like the god Osiris in Egypt was cut into 14 pieces by his brother Set. He's the king of Egypt, just like Kennedy was. His administration was seen as kind of like King Arthur, Camelot, the Knights of the Round Table. And then the book depository was there, and that's been turned into a museum now. And I'm sure, Ira, you remember Bill Hicks talking about how he went there, and he said it was very realistic. He went up to the top story window, and Oswald wasn't there, so they had it
Yes.
they had it set up just like the day that it happened. Besides that, though, I walked the street. I went up to the grassy knoll, the famous grassy knoll, and I really didn't feel much energy at all, surprisingly. The only energy I felt was, the attention, like you said, that people have placed on that particular location for so many decades. So you could feel that. Maybe it was different than energy in the sense of like a really dark, negative energy. It more so, Ira, felt empty. It just felt cold. And yeah, it was really cold outside. There was snow on the ground, but it felt cold in the sense of like emptiness, like when your heart is missing a loved one or something like that. You know what I mean? It just felt really
melancholy
empty.
kind of feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that, to answer your question, that's more or less what it felt like. It felt very, very empty and kind of hopeless, as opposed to when I went to the Georgia Guidestones, I had a sense of like really bad, really negative energy, really deceptive,
really bad juju.
Exactly. So to me, I'm not exactly sure why that was. I have a kind of like different theories that run through my mind, but I'm not sure that's what I felt though.
Well, that makes sense actually, because a lot of people do look at the whole Kennedy assassination, maybe not in this frightening light, but in this light of, you hear the whole, Camelot has died, King Arthur has died, the whole mythos that is associated with the Kennedy presidency and the line that happened there. And a lot of people do sort of have this nostalgic or melancholy kind of a feel for it, because they think, a lot of people out there think that Kennedy basically was the last not bought president, the last president who has not been paid off or owned by some other entity outside of the presidential seat.
Right. I don't know how I even feel about that. I don't think I'm a subscriber to that myself. What about you?
No, I think that there were things that were going on with that one as well. I kind of have the opinion basically that if you get into any kind of public office like that, you're pretty much owned by somebody. That you're owing a debt to somebody. They got you there basically. So you're always going to have that being hung over you, whether that's through blackmail means or just by the means of they can say, well, you're going to be gone at any given moment in time. I like, again, referring to Bill Hicks, the presidents after Kennedy, basically they're seeing a viewpoint of the grassy knoll of that was another gunshot that never was shown on camera and that sort of thing. Curtain closes and okay, so yes, sir, no, sir, I will say anything that you want me to say. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Bomb Iraq, you got it.
Yeah. I think maybe possibly what ended up occurring with Kennedy, and this is just kind of my take on it, is that he was kind of bought and paid for, got in there through those means, and maybe had kind of a crisis of conscience while he was in there, and that's why he was basically removed.
Well, right. I think that might be a better way to look at it. And go back and look at I don't know how many presidents have stepped out of the shadows, if you will, after their presidency and regretted what they did during their presidency. Look at Woodrow Wilson. He not even outside of his presidency, he immediately regretted signing the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. Look at what's his name's speech about the military-industrial complex. Speaking about how this power structure exists that is just it includes every aspect of the government and all corporations that are involved in what we have as a kind of a corporatocracy. A lot of presidents have spoken about that, and Kennedy knew a lot about it too. I mean, he gave that famous speech to the newspapers just a couple of weeks before he was shot, talking about secrecy and covering the truth up, and that people have a right to know the truth. So they all have a kind of an idea, just like the average person on the street has an idea that things are just a little bit off, that things are just a little bit crazy, that everything's just a little bit backwards. But nobody, for the most part, really goes too far down the rabbit hole, because once you reach a certain point, it's like, you're driving on the road and you see a sign that says, stop, turn around, and go back. You can go down that road a couple miles, and then it starts to get really dark and it gets really scary. People usually do a U-turn and they come right back up the road and they go down the other route, which says American Idol and, free hamburgers.
Yeah, and you kind of experienced that on your trip there as well, that you were kind of going through the desert and seeing the no gas for the next 120 miles and all that kind of stuff. The same kind of thing goes on in that rabbit hole. Again, like I referred to earlier, the dark night of the soul comes upon you, and that is it can be very scary to somebody that's never experienced it before. The changing of your entire lifestyle, or the changing or the breaking of the habits and the programming that's put on you, the brainwashing that's been put on you. And that applies to everything. That applies to your concepts of what the government is doing. That applies to religion. That applies to what your parents do. The first time, for the first period of time after a child learns that Santa Claus isn't real, even after the parents have been telling them all along, that time period is a very dark time period, basically, for kids, because they are learning basically that their parents aren't perfect and that things aren't as real as what they think that they were.
Right. I mean, at least explain Santa Claus as a game, rather than telling your kids, no, this person exists and they break into our home and they eat our food and they leave us presents. And it's a fun time of the year. And kids find out and they're like, oh, my parents have lied to me my whole life. And even if it's not conscious, it's got to be somewhat subconscious, and that creates more of a rebellious attitude. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's a side note.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something that I did want to bring up. This is kind of hitting you with a topic that we didn't speak about earlier, but I've had a couple of people ask me about it and thought I'd get your take on things. Have you seen anything that's been going on as far as Russia of late is concerned over the past week or two, and how there was the fire that was going on in the monastery that was just a block away from the Kremlin? One of the high ups, basically I think it was basically Putin's top bodyguard, was found dead. Putin went missing for 11 days worth of time, and Oh, well, they've been having their power turning off and on in the whole of Moscow over the past, week or so, and lights going off. And, and then on top of all of that, then the whole CERN thing is starting up tomorrow, basically, with the whole convergence of stellar events and how they're kind of doing that in that strange sort of timing, right? So kind of wanted to get your take on those couple of different things.
Well, my take's actually very short because I'm not too well versed on what's been going on in Russia, and I'm not too well versed about what's happening with CERN right now. Like I said, I'm just kind of getting back into the swing of things in terms of researching and reading. So I really, honestly, just to tell you the truth, I don't have much of an opinion on that, far from what you just mentioned.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you'd had a chance really to investigate into it yet, so I thought I'd toss it out there and just see what you thought.
Oh, sure.
As far as CERN, the CERN issue is concerned, what is it? Tomorrow there's 3 different stellar events that are occurring. What is it? We have the solar eclipse happening, and there's 2 other things. And it's my brain is farting at the moment, so I can't remember what the other 2 are. But at the same day that these 3 different events are occurring, we have CERN basically restarting the Large Hadron Collider, and it's sort of I guess you could say, again, kind of getting into the idea of the power elite. They do all of the things that they do based upon these times, that they have a very strict schedule that they work by. You look at the issues like NASA does their launches on occultic days. They're days that have occultic significance. They're wearing their patches that have the occultic significance, and all of these things tie together as a ritual. So it's like the whole CERN thing is also it being enacted as a ritual. I mean, there's even been information coming out that they're doing like this really strange dance and stuff before they get it turned on tomorrow, and it's weird, right?
Yeah, very strange. I need to look into that a little bit more, maybe tonight, because that's very interesting. But again, I haven't heard anything else about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I kind of hit you with it. I wasn't sure if you'd had a chance really, because I know you just got your internet turned on today and still trying to get settled in and everything. So
that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so I haven't. I mean, the only thing I have right now is I have 8 news articles up that we had discussed and a couple we haven't discussed before the show started. I know that so much has happened since I've kind of been out of the research loop, or at least out of the keeping up with what's been going on in current events. I've been told 3 or 4 times now by people I know sent me news about Ceres and was it like a space probe that we have taking photographs of Ceres right now and the strange lights. I keep hearing about that. Again, that story kind of seems like a little bit of disinformation or attention diversion, kind of like those stories of the jelly donuts on Mars. But anyway, that's
or hillbillies' emails.
Yeah, right. It's just a little bit of that. But other than that, I can't probably speak much more on that topic. But if you have anything else you'd like to add or ask, I'd be very happy to keep going in terms of that direction.
Oh, that's okay. Like I said, I wasn't sure if you'd had a chance to research any of that kind of stuff or not. I think my take on it is basically that if you look at the things that are going on right now across the world, we are entering into like a time period that does have occultic significance. And if people research into that aspect of things, they might start seeing a bigger picture with things. I mean, look at the fact that Netanyahu got reelected, just yesterday, and all of the things that were associated with that. You have
he guarantees that there will not be a Palestinian state as long as he's prime minister. So yeah. I found that was really frustrating, and also I always use the word interesting, because you always hear, well, there's no peace in Palestine because there's just not been any terms that have been agreed upon by both sides. Well, now the Prime Minister of Israel has disproved all the people that told me that I was wrong, because he said that there will not be peace while he's in office. So there you go. You can take it, you can chew on it, and go back to your little corner and hide again.
Yeah, exactly. My take on it is that the thing that's frustrating to me is that this guy is such a warmonger. I mean, he even came here to Congress, stood before Congress, and screamed and hollered about Iran doesn't need a bomb. Iran doesn't need a bomb.
Well, neither does Israel.
They
Israel
don't. Yeah,
400.
I was just gonna say, and yet Israel has enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world 5 times over. Okay, so the height of hypocrisy with this guy just blows me away. It makes me facepalm in a big way, and it just frustrates me.
When I see him, I get that same kind of deceptive feeling that I had when I went to the Georgia Guidestones. I don't know if make a correlation and a connection. Just that same kind of energetic feeling. When I look at a picture of this guy, I can't even imagine what it would be like if you were in the same room with him. I think he's just like a weasel, just like a snake, even more so than Barack Obama.
Oh, absolutely.
Anybody. It's just like this guy is just pure evil.
Absolutely. I think the way that you can kind of look at things is that Obama, for instance, was, he is a puppet. He's one that enjoys his strings, but he is a puppet. You look at somebody like Netanyahu, and this guy is not a puppet. This guy is actually one of the power players,
I know. I feel like Obama's the one that's bending over, and Netanyahu's the one who's taking his pants off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got it right. And people really, again, need to pay attention. We're not trying to be anti-Semitic here. We're being anti-stupidity. Why did this guy get voted back into office knowing that he's a warmonger, knowing that he wants to destroy the world? Why are we tossing trillions of dollars to Israel and supporting them over and over again? Why do our congressmen have dual citizenship in America and in Israel? On and on and on. The cards are laid out. The things are there for people to see. If they just freaking open their eyes and take a look, they will be able to see the deceptions that are going on.
Well, I mean, Israel also has. Israel is a very, very small tract of land in the east, and yet they've got the second largest F-16 fighter jet fleet in the world because Doug Zakim, who was comptroller of the Pentagon, who also lost the $2.3 trillion before 9/11, he wrote off, millions and billions of dollars worth of F-16 fighter jets as scrap and then sold them to Israel for pennies on the dollar. So, what you're saying, Ira, it's not anti-Semitic. It's like anti-stupidity. It's anti-ignorance. When you do lay the cards out on the table, there's some fundamental questions that need to be answered before anybody should be ignorant enough to use the term anti-Semitism. We need to have some questions answered, and don't give me that, we stand with Israel. I'm going to put an Israeli-American bumper sticker on my car. I stand for Israel. Most people don't even have a clue what's in the food they're eating for breakfast, let alone have a clue what's going on in Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's that kind of thing drives me nuts. It's like the people that say that they're supporting the troops by hitting a like button on a picture of a guy in a uniform on Facebook. That's not supporting the troops. If you want to support the troops, give them some food. Go out and help them. They're starving. They're starving on the streets right now. How many of the homeless population is veterans? Isn't it something like 35% of the homeless population is comprised entirely of veterans? And these people are out here suiciding. 22 veterans a day committing suicide. They need support, right? just hitting like on Facebook on a picture is not giving support. Putting a bumper sticker on your car that says I support my troops, I support the troops, is not giving them support. Go out there and actually give them some freaking help, people. That's giving them support. You know?
Ira.
It just drives me nuts, Hey,
it drives me nuts.
Lip service drives me crazy. It really does.
Well, it's like those people who also think that first of all, before I go there, it's like instant gratification. It's a little bit of laziness, and it's the feeling that you can basically take care of all of your social needs with social media. You don't feel alone if you've got a Facebook page. You've got 3,000 friends. You don't leave the house, but you've got 3,000 friends on Facebook. You feel better about yourself, and your information is being sold to a litany of different corporations for millions of dollars, and you're just happy about it because they can send you packages before you order them. You get your whatever you're ordering in the mail faster. So when I think of what is being done to not only homeless people, which, like George Carlin said, it's not homelessness, it's houselessness. Homes are like an idealistic concept. It's homes that they're lacking. It is really incredible to watch the state of decay in this country, where people who, at least perceptively, fought for what we consider to be freedom, they are going in for multiple tiers of duty, a lot of psychological issues from what they've seen and what they're doing. And yet the people that click like on Facebook, or they throw the yellow ribbon on the back of their car thinking that makes some difference, these are the people that believe that, after 9/11, that they could buy duct tape to protect themselves from chemical attacks.
Yeah.
These are the people that believe George Bush, and they think, oh my God, he's a great leader, Ira, because he told us to go shopping after 9/11.
And mission was accomplished, right?
And the mission was accomplished, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same type of mentality that was taught in the 1950s and the 1960s, where if a nuclear explosion happens, get under your desk and put your hands above your head because that'll protect you, right? It's the same kind of thing. And I guess the thing that also enters my mind with the people who are the Facebook likers, that's kind of what I term them, the likers out there. They pay lip service to be able to feel that goodness about themselves. Oh, I did a good thing here. I did something positive. And yeah, the thought might be there, but what actual help is it giving? I went into that actually in my show earlier tonight that was broadcast tonight, the savior mentality. And these people you can look at as having this kind of savior mentality. Oh, we're doing this to do something to help them, to save them from whatever it is that they're going through. But it doesn't do any good. And speaking of social media and Facebook, they announced, yesterday, that now you'll be able to transfer cash to other people through Facebook.
Fantastic.
Isn't that wonderful?
To send money.
It's wonderful. Absolutely. Now, speaking of people who are trying to do things to help people, I have an article that I wanted to hit you with here and just kind of get your quick opinion about. The article basically goes into a school, I believe it was called Benton Middle School, that has enacted a program to punish students that do things wrong in a way that parents are heavily disagreeing with. They're outcrying against. Basically, the punishment is this. If a child gets into a food fight and throws food around the lunchroom, they're the ones that have to clean it up. If they do something to throw trash on the floor during, or while they're walking through the hallways, they have to go through the hallways and pick up all the trash that they see. And this punishment, quote unquote, is being outcried against because, as one parent stated, they feel that their child is being humiliated and being frightened so that they don't want to come back to school. What do you think about that?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one, Ira. I think immediately what comes to mind is parents that think like that are probably those frozen parents, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you know what I mean, but the frozen parents who they just kind of watch their kids, and no matter how trashy or disgusting or overweight or their kids are, and they let them be that way, they think, oh, they're just the most adorable, cute, smartest thing on the planet, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like a good idea to me initially, but there's a lot of things that sound like a good idea, like healthcare and mandatory voting. Sounds like a good idea. Communism sounds like a good idea. To make your kids clean up what messes they make. What's stranger to me about the way school systems work is when I was in high school, all the kids that skipped school, their punishment for skipping school was to then be legally suspended for a week.
Oh,
so
God,
that
yes.
was really backwards. Instead of making them, like, forcing them to come to school or something. I don't know. The school system's completely backwards and messed up. The American education system is just complete. I learned absolutely, I don't think, anything in school. The only thing I learned in school was that I didn't learn anything. And about this, I don't know. I feel like it's a good idea, but I feel like, again, those parents that think that are those overprivileged, and I don't necessarily mean financially, overprivileged in the sense of believing that they are special, that American elitism that we spoke about earlier on the show, believing that because you were born 50 feet over the Mexican border in Texas, that makes you more important than the child that was born 50 feet to the south in Mexico. That mentality that we're just a little bit better here, we shouldn't have to pick up our trash, there's immigrants to do that for us. That kind of a mentality. I don't know. I think it's a good idea to make kids pick up their trash like that if they make a mess. I think it's a bad idea. And don't get me wrong when I say this, it's a bad idea to let these parents that think like this have kids. But then if I say that, then I sound like a eugenicist. So I have to really be careful.
There you
how
go.
I speak.
Yeah, I've always had this weird dichotomy in my brain where I look around the world and I think to myself, man, you know, some of the people that try to claim that we need a license to be able to have kids might actually be onto something. But then I think, God, I don't want to think that way, you know.
Right. I thought that a lot recently. When I was traveling across the country, that thought went through my mind a couple times. I'm thinking, not necessarily because there's traffic or because there's a lot of people, but just the people that have absolutely no respect for not only anybody else, they don't even have respect for themselves.
Absolutely.
They're operating on such a low vibrational state of awareness. These people are the proles. They are below the profane. These people are just like the lowest life form, or the lowest human life form that exists. And you see it everywhere. It's not just and you think that, and you've been socially conditioned to believe that it's the houseless people, if you will, or that it's college kids who don't have enough money to finish school, so they have to drop out and move back in with their parents, or people that are just dirt poor, so they rob convenience stores, not money necessarily, but they steal food for their kid, whatever the case may be. But really what I'm talking about, it's not just people who are dirty or negative in a conventional sense. We're talking about the rich, wealthy people who have been so conditioned to believe that their lifestyle is the lifestyle that should be achieved socially, that they'll, with millions of dollars to their name, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to their name, walk past homeless people, not even really see them, and yet go to a restaurant and spend $75 for a margarita and $125 for a ribeye steak.
Yeah, exactly. You're right on target. And again, just like you said earlier, I hate to agree with everything that you say, but my God, it's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
We actually need to hit another break here real quick. This will be the second one, and so we'll be right back after these messages, and we'll hit some of the other articles that you found. I definally want to touch on those.
I've got a great one that ties right in with this when we come back.
Awesome. Be right back, guys. TROLLS. This is a terrible new disorder being diagnosed every day. Victims of this disease have been found in psychologists, scientists, doctors, other people with letters and numbers behind their names, and anyone else who is in the world specifically to cause trouble. It stands for Totalitarian Regime Orchestrating Laughable Liar Syndrome, and is a terrible burden on anyone around those that have been diagnosed with this disease. Symptoms may include debunking all truths, diversion tactics, divisive talk and flame war baiting, COINTELPRO tactics and maneuvers, and making rude and obnoxious comments even where such things are not warranted. You can help cure the problem by opening your eyes to the facts, speaking about this disorder to anyone you know, and not allowing their disease to influence your life. If you or someone you know has been diagnosed with trolls, please seek immediate assistance by going to latenightinthemidlands.com and listening to all of the shows that are available. Only you can prevent trolls. This message brought to you by IRA, the Independently Reporting Association. Thank you for your support.
The L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you.
The new priests are the purveyors of the now. The if you don't get this right now, you're doomed mindset that is surrounding us was created by these men in black, these dark masters, these puppet masters that control the strings. They, the ones with the real knowledge of how reality works, those that know and understand the origins of us, those are the ones controlling the masses through the media, through the politics, through everything that causes us to be divided, losing the sense of what is really real. That reality is that we are all connected, all together in this thought experiment that the universe is running. We are intimately connected together, forever traveling through the universe at light speed. We're all breathing the same air. The same energies pass through us. The same emotions that you feel are the same emotions that I feel. We are all one. Stop being divided by them. Stop letting the priests of chaos and blight rule you. Stop believing the lies. Well, hello there, and welcome back to The Last Frequency. My name is Ira Robinson, and I am here with Ryan Gable. Michael had tonight off. He had a bit of a day and needed a little bit of a break, and unfortunately our guest ended up canceling tonight. So it's been Ryan and I having I think, a really interesting discussion, and I hope that you guys out there are enjoying it as much as I am, because, man, I am pumped up tonight. I am having a great old time. I don't know about you, Ryan, but what do you have going on?
I'm having a great time, too. I, again, think our chemistry is just absolutely magnificent. The article that I had, we were talking a little bit about schools and whatnot, and we don't even need to focus on this article. I just thought it was a kind of a good segue, something that's going on. There's a 21-year-old girl, it says, from the Business Insider who refuses to pay back her student loans. And she compares her cause to Rosa Parks. This girl named Mallory Heine, 21-year-old former student of Everest College, is part of a group of students refusing to pay back their student loans. So she's saying, Ira, tell me what you think about this, that the reason she's refusing to pay back her loans is because she received an insufficient education. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, you know, we were saying earlier that the educational system is not the educational system. I mean, it's there to indoctrinate. So, of course, she didn't get a sufficient education. Nobody does, right? That's my first take on it. I didn't
get any education. I'm going to jump on this lawsuit, and I'm going to try to sue the federal government and my school for loss of income, because I think I've lost more money going to school than I've gained it.
Oh, yes. You are exactly right. I mean, the thing that I think as far as colleges are concerned, and, you know, for those of that are out there that are big on their college education and all that kind of stuff, whatever, you can have that. That's fine with me. I didn't have a college education, but the way that I look at things is college is essentially useless. I mean, it really is. You go out and you get your $50,000 degree to then turn around and be able to work at McDonald's. That's what it comes down to. I mean, that's really the only jobs that people are being able to find these days after they get out of college. So they're hit with this huge debt and then have to try to repay it on minimum wage, even though, according to statistics, you can't work a full-time job at minimum wage and still be able to afford a two-bedroom apartment anywhere in the country right now. But again, tied to this article specifically, what this reminds me of is the agenda that Obama was trying to push forward, where he is trying to make college like Obamacare, you know, trying to give free college education to everybody. And this article, I think, actually was brought up as a propaganda piece directly related to that. It's trying to put this idea into people's consciousnesses that this kind of thing needs to occur.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing about college that really gets me is that, you know, you have, again, as students or as teenagers, children, even adults that go back to college, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that we should stay away from, because a couple decades ago it was probably a good thing to go to school and to get an education. But the way things are now, these are almost obsolete institutions, and that's why a lot of technical schools are popping up. When I went to school, Ira, whether it was my high school, middle school, or the film school that I had attended, since film school was more of a technical school, I, of course, learned, you know, about some technical things in terms of film cameras and whatnot. But, you know, when it comes to actual education in the traditional sense, I really did learn absolutely nothing. And I don't like to, and I don't think I really ever do, toot my own proverbial horn, but I was, as a child, very, very, let's just say, dumb. I was not a straight A student. I was not a straight B or C student. I was more like a straight D, very common that I got F kind of a student.
I spent most of my high school career stoned, so.
There you go. So you didn't even go to class. Or if you went, maybe you didn't pay much attention. And that's the thing. I mean, then you're probably in agreement with me, is that I learned little to nothing. And yet, even though I went to a film school, I'm not working in film. I could have gone to a broadcast school and learned how to do radio. And I can guarantee you that I would not be sitting here before you today. I'd be sitting here with a cheap mixing board probably and a textbook trying to figure out how it all works. I was able to build my radio show from absolutely basically nothing. And I was able to write 2 books. One book is over 700 pages. Every page is just jam-packed with information, all sourced. And another book I just got finished writing, False Prophets and the Lovers of Children, over 200 pages at this point. I'm going to publish it very soon, about pedophile networks and about child trafficking and those subjects, which are very, very negative to some. And I just got finished writing that. Now, I just a couple of years ago, I've been more and more waking up, if you will. My eyes have been opening wider and wider. 4 years ago, Ira, even before, even after I started radio, been doing radio for 6 years. So about 4 years ago, even when I was in radio for 2 full years, I never conceived that I could write a book. And then one day I just decided to start writing, and I did it. And that doesn't make me intelligent or smart, but I didn't go to school for that. I didn't go to school for radio. And yet my most successful the most successful things in my life, I think, are the radio show and are my written works. And I never attended school for either one. The things I've attended school for have cost me lots of money, thousands of dollars, and I've gotten absolutely I've gotten like no payback for that, no economic payback for that at all. Even the film work that I've done has absolutely nothing to do with film school. It actually came through my radio contacts and not through education.
It's weird how our lives kind of correlate so closely together, because I built my radio show up from scratch, had no education in it myself, and I've written a number of books as well. So it's kind of weird how that kind of correlates together. Now, granted, mine are not as long as yours, at least not my nonfiction works. I've written both fiction and nonfiction. I write a lot of science fiction, but I have also written quite a few nonfiction books as well.
Are all of them published?
Yeah, well, they're all published on Amazon, so yeah. Yep.
Well, what we should do is we should get my 2 books and your books and then Michael's book when it comes out, and we should make like a page on L&M where people can go and purchase the books for, I mean, I don't know if you can do this with yours, but I think I can do a discount for mine, and we should do that through L&M. I think it'd be a cool way to get all the hosts' written works up on the website.
Oh, absolutely. That would be really cool. Definitely. I just thought it was weird how well our lives kind of correlate together. It's just kind of one more little kind of chink in the armor there,
Yeah. And you know what the thing is? I would have never, I was originally kicked off the first radio station I did, and I'd have never written the first book if it wouldn't have been for that, and I'd have never met Michael or met you if it wouldn't have been for that. So all those negative things that happen in life eventually create a very positive scenario in the future. And it's difficult to see when negative things happen, but they end up creating something much more positive. Like you were saying, the order comes out of chaos.
Absolutely. Everything happens for a reason. You might not know the reason at that moment in time, and you may not agree with the reason, but in hindsight 2020, you'll always see that the reason was actually for the benefit of you, whether you really realize it or not. I found that time and time again in my life.
Absolutely. That is exactly right, Ira. Hey, I have a news article here I just found, as a matter of fact, before we started the show, and I had it off to the side. I forgot about it. I wanted to bring this up to you. This was actually posted back at the end of, the beginning of March. It was updated March 3rd, so a couple weeks ago. But I didn't see this, and I apologize if you already covered this. I have been saying for a long time that antidepressant drugs, especially the ones that are given to our children, actually have the very opposite effect, and they actually create a lot of suicidal thoughts.
Yes, most definitely do.
Right. So I don't know how many times you've been told that you're not a doctor, so you're incorrect, but I've been told that before. Well, I have an article here from the Huffington Post, and the article says, antidepressants, while the science behind antidepressants may be completely backwards. It says antidepressants are the most commonly prescribed medication in the United States, with 1 in 10 Americans currently taking pills like Zoloft or Lexapro to treat depression. But these pharmaceuticals are only fully effective roughly 30% of the time and often come with troublesome side effects, which we know are not the actual side effects. They are just simply the effects. The article goes on to describe that the antidepressants, Ira, actually cause depression, just like we've been saying for many, many years. Science, again, catches up with the conspiracy theories, I suppose.
Yeah. It falls right into the things that we had discussed actually on your show last week, where the vaccines were only 18% effective or 15% effective in the people who are most susceptible to it. Where is the dividing line where it actually is a complete failure, and where is it the dividing line where it did not help at all? So the depression that the person is feeling after they're on these antidepressant pills is actually a depression that was there originally, and they're just giving you basically a placebo, and you're still feeling the effects of whatever it is that you had going on to begin with.
Right. It's like getting drunk or drinking a bunch of alcohol and just kind of inebriating yourself and thinking that takes your problems away. And then you wake up the next day and your problems are worse because now you're vomiting and you have a headache.
And you're out of money because you just spent it on all the strippers. So, yeah.
That's right. That's right. So that's how it happens. I've been saying this for a long time. And because I don't have a PhD, Ira, you don't have a PhD, do you?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we probably shouldn't talk about this if we don't have PhDs, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. But in terms of these antidepressant drugs, we've been saying it for years. It causes the opposite effect. Now, when are people going to get an original thought and they're going to be able to piece together mass shootings, whether it was James Holmes, Adam Lanza, or any of the other smaller ones that weren't as largely promoted in the news, and I do say promoted on purpose, promoted for fear and other reasons. And when are we going to get on board with realizing that not only do a lot of these medications that we take, they don't work, that the pharmaceutical companies are the real drug dealers. A lot of the illegal drugs are drugs that can actually help a lot of the illnesses that the FDA will come out and say, well, this drug can only be used to cure this, and you can't cure cancer with anything except radiation and chemotherapy, when people are curing cancer with a box of baking soda and a glass jar of molasses. And when are we going to be able to come to terms with reality and just say, look, everything that we have been taught is a lie, or we are completely ill-informed about what we think we are informed about. And when we come to that realization, we realize, just like this article says about the science behind antidepressants, that the science is backwards. And that's a theme that we've been discussing tonight, that everything seems to be backwards. What you worship in your religious institutions, whether it's a church or a mosque, everything is the opposite of what you think you're worshiping. When you think you're worshiping the light, and that light is opposing the darkness, what you are actually worshiping is the darkness that is opposing the light. In terms of finances and education, you think that by getting an education, as it's termed, that you're going to be able to obtain finances someday through the acquiring of a very, very well-paying job. When in fact, you end up spending all of your money attempting to get that job, when you could have just applied for the job or gotten another job that maybe you make a little bit less than the CEO, but you're making more money, and the person with a penny in their pocket has more money than the person with $100 in their pocket, but yet $50,000 worth of debt.
Yes, exactly.
Everything is backwards.
Exactly. I've said that many times. The research shows that if you have $20 in your pocket and no debt on your head, you are more wealthy than 80% of other Americans out there. And that is a sad statistic.
It is a very, very sad statistic, especially when we're in the land of the plenty, right? We're in the land of freedom and expression, and yet it's the very opposite of that. You're told you have rights, and yet you try to exercise those rights, and you're beaten down by police officers. You're told there's freedom for religious expression, and yet all religions, for the most part in this country, a lot of religions are accepted, but particularly Islam is just hated on so negatively. Every day in the news you see a story about how negative Islam is, and how bad Islam is, and it's associated with terrorism. Well, if this is a Christian country, and what we're doing to other nations in the world is godly and heavenly and something Jesus would have done, well, then I think I read the wrong book, because I don't think that that's what Christianity is all about. I don't think forcing our beliefs down somebody else's throat is very Christ-like at all. But again, the theme is most things, if not all things that we've been taught, are completely backwards. It's like the Michael Elner quote. I'm sure you remember that, about religions destroy spirituality, doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice. That's what it's all about, Ira.
Yes, exactly. You've got it right on the nail. Right on the nail. I have said for a long time that this world of opposites, I think it's intentional. I really do. I think that the opposites are there intentionally. And getting into weird spiritual kind of understanding with all of it. And I'm just going to kind of throw my take out on it here and see what you think about it. But you can almost look at things as the balance is there. So you have all of the people who are trying to do things that are positive, but they're being hit with negative things, right? Because of the positive things that they're doing. And that's sort of the universe's way of keeping the balance intact. I guess you could say. The people who are doing negative things, who are doing things to destroy the world, and they're getting the quote unquote positive things, through the money, through the popularity, and all of that kind of stuff. Again, it's the balancing act that's taking place. Now, I know that you kind of have a take on karma yourself, but mine shows or says basically that karma is repaid. The karma that's repaid is paid either in this lifetime right now or after the fact. The people that you harm, that you've done harm to in your lifetime, you live their lives, basically. You live the hurt that they gave or that you gave to them. And in turn, all of the hurts that they did to anybody else based upon the hurt that you did to them, and so on and so forth. So, there is a repayment. There's a balancing that's there. That's the hell. Exactly. So I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, just that. First of all, that's the hell that you create for yourself. I mean, that's the mind, if you will, that creates your own reality. People think, well, if I sit here long enough and I think about it, I'll create a Bugatti outside in the parking lot, and I'll create a bunch of strippers, and I'll create this, and I'll create a bunch of money and jewels and diamonds. It's all physical wealth. And I'll eventually one day, if I do good deeds, I'll end up in heaven where God got me a nice apartment by the water, and I've got a gold street and pearly gates at the front entrance. And it's all physical material items.
Yeah, that's karma, the whole not to interrupt you too much here, but that's the deception that's in the secret thing, right? You've heard about The Secret, right? That's the deception that takes place with it. All of the people that fall into the trap of The Secret, they are focusing on the physical things, the manifesting a boat in their driveway, and manifesting that they're going to have this beautiful woman by their side, and so on and so forth. There's no spirituality to it. It's all the physical aspects of everything.
It's all the physical aspects, and that's the big problem. And even if you look esoterically, I've spoke about it dozens of times. If you look esoterically at the creation of all matter, what allows matter to form is the Saturnistic influence of the planet Saturn. It's one of the heavenly spheres, one of the gods, and people tend to see Saturn as such a negative light. Saturn as Satan or Kronos, the grand architect of the physical universe. And we see that as a negative thing. But again, if it's not for, and this is in terms of ordo ab chao, order out of chaos, and karma, if it's not for those negative, dark experiences, then we can't grow and accept light for what it is. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I always had this idea. I was thinking, and this is before I ever began thinking even remotely close to what I think now. Just as a kid, these thoughts came to mind, and I think, well, hold on a second. If the devil's this really bad guy, and it's using general terms, and God is this really good guy, if we take the devil away for a second, how can God be good? Because we don't really have anything to compare it to. You might have a car that you think's really nice, but if somebody gives you a nicer car, that car actually becomes trash, and you've got a nicer car now. So if God's is a good guy, how do we know God's a good guy without comparing them to the devil, who's a bad guy in a very general sense? So in that way, that's one of the first things that made me realize that they have to have each other to exist. And if they have to have each other to exist, and it's not really physical beings, it's a dualistic concept, and it's more philosophical and allegorical in relationship to its true meaning. At least that's what I think, and that all plays in with the karma aspect of it.
Yeah, I do too, and that really does tie right into a lot of the religiocentric people out there, the hyper-Christian kind of people who basically try to say, if you even think about the devil, he's going to make an appearance, and this is something that you don't want, and stay away from even dark thoughts about the devil. Don't even mention his name. It's the whole Harry Potter with Voldemort thing. The great unnamed one. It's the same thing. Well, listen, we're going to take a real quick break here. We're going to just do just a couple of minutes here, and we'll be right back with more. I'm having such a great time tonight.
Me too. You're listening to The Last Frequency with Ira Robinson and Ryan Gable. We'll be right back.
To hide the truth, once you know it, makes you think that you are better than everyone else. It makes you into the type of person who says, "Ooh, I have a secret," but you're not ready to hear it yet. However, for $39.95, I'll let you in on the secret. You'll lead the people to the promised land for the cheap price of 3 easy payments of 1/3 of their soul apiece.
I'm Joni Ernst. I grew up castrating hogs on an Iowa farm. In 2008, I fell in love.
I will not even go to the strip clubs anymore. Wake the f*** up.
Hi, I'm Bob. I am running.
Other signs of erectile dysfunction may include extreme skin discoloration.
I know black folks have had a hard time with slavery, and the government was in on it, and the government's in on it again.
Smart, handsome, charming, articulate.
If you are the sexual predator and sociopath who murdered my sister Lynette, and you come to my front door to do harm to my girls, I'm going to use my Glock to blow your balls off.
If you have a Boehner lasting longer than 23 years, seek immediate medical attention.
But by 2012, our relationship was in trouble. But I stuck with him because he promised he'd be better. He's great at promises.
I changed my name to cover my past, to cover my bankruptcy.
Tell Senator Pryor to stop parroting Obama.
820,000 of our tax dollars were spent studying how monkeys respond to unfairness. I'll never pay down what he spent.
Won't let them in, won't let them see that I'm a phony radio disc jockey.
I know I'm stuck with Barack for 2 more years. And how they act while on cocaine. Enough of these political ads, right?
So when I get to Washington, I'll stand up to the big spenders. You vote for Texas. You don't stab her in the back by voting for cloture on Obamacare.
Mitch McConnell wants you to think I'm Barack Obama.
But trying to distract me with this war on women?
We've all heard the one about pigs squealing. But when Joni Ernst had the chance to do something in Iowa, we didn't hear a peep.
Danny go, I can't lie to you anymore. That's my name, Danny Go. And I've got lies to answer for, because Danny don't care what you're going to say. Let my lies rage on. Lying never bothered me anymore.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for sticking around through that real quick break there. We wanted to get the third one in for you guys. My name is Ira Robinson, and I'm with Ryan Gable, and you guys are listening to The Last Frequency. Thank you so much for sticking around with us, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the show so far. Ryan, what do you have next on your plate?
I've got a couple of different articles. I was looking at the chat room. I apologize for anyone in the chat room because I'm usually in there when I do the show, but I haven't been on the show for a couple of weeks. I'm just kind of getting a feel of everything again, so I've forgotten about it. I've been logged out a couple of times. I'm looking through some news articles that you sent me. I've got some news articles I didn't get a chance to send you. I know you saw this one. If we can breeze through a couple of these stories really quick. Nanorobot trial begins in humans. Microscopic DNA devices will be injected into a leukemia patient in a bid to destroy abnormal cells. What do you think about that?
Well, it fits into what you were saying earlier, that when it comes to anything that is developed along these lines, number one, on the surface of things, it looks good. They're doing this for the benefit of people. They're doing it to improve health or to cause a healing action to take place. And that's a very positive thing. That's a very good thing. And I definitely support it fully. I think that technology is there that should be used for things like this. On the other hand, we know that there are very dark uses that could come about from something like this as well. If you can change the cellular structure of the body, you can easily change the cellular structure of the mind as well and cause people to start acting and reacting in different ways. They know the psychology of people so well that it really would not be that difficult for them to take a technology like this and start warping and changing people's ways and mindsets. That's my take on it anyways.
No, I actually agree with everything that you just said, and for time reasons, I won't probably go into any more detail because I haven't got a chance to really research much more than just reading the article.
Well, we've got about a half hour left, just to let you know. So,
oh, okay, I thought we were coming up on the very end here. We were going to be able to go over a little bit from like midnight.
Yeah, because we didn't start it until about 9:15. So.
Oh, okay, perfect. So, okay, we do have a little bit of time. Well, then, I mean, I guess I could just kind of agree with what you said. And the only thing I could really add to that is just an expansion of that agreement in the sense that, we see a lot of scientific advancements that are done under the guise of helping, terminally ill patients or helping amputees, robotics technology. But it comes to a point where we have to ask ourselves, what is the line that we're going to draw? Is it the point where we have now uploaded our consciousness into a computer system? Is it the point where a human being is now like General Grievous from Star Wars, where it's like 3 organs and the rest is a machine? Where are we going to draw the line? Technology, Ira, can help. Technology and science can make great strides in making the conditions of life better for average people. The problem is those who control this reality, those who really know how reality works, what the human body is, they don't want the average person to be completely healed. And it's not just for financial reasons. So you keep coming back, buying drugs, getting vaccinations and getting surgeries. It is about money. There's another part to it, though. It has a lot to do with eugenics, and this goes back into the Bush's involvement in the eugenics programs that existed even before World War II. And it wasn't just a breeding of the Aryan race. It's a elimination of a lot of inferior races as so concerned some of those elitists who believe that certain races are inferior to not necessarily the white race, but just its own race in itself has become the financially wealthy. If you're wealthy and you have money, everybody else is inferior to you, no matter what color their skin is.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So these people, they get this idea in their head that they want to help, and they just, whether they're students or doctors, and they develop technology to help a blind person see. Sounds like a great idea. They develop technology to allow an amputee to use to use a computer with their mind. Someone who doesn't have arms, let's say, they can use a computer with their mind now. All great ideas. But now the technology comes to a tipping point where we say, well, we can either use the technology for what we're using it for now, and that's just to help those who need it, or we can take it a step further. And by all means, I don't mean what most people are going to think I mean by this statement, but we could play God. This has nothing to do with religion, and I don't care if people do play God. That's not the point. I think there are certain natural systems that if we want to continue to live, at least in the way that we live now, not necessarily in technology, but in terms of evolution and development, we should probably stay away from things, Ira, such as, genetically modifying mosquitoes and releasing them in Central Florida, genetically modifying food and allowing that genetically modified food to be absorbed into your body and your bloodstream, to where scientists have now found that genetically modified food can actually alter your very DNA. So I think that playing around with nature is not something that we should do. And this technology here doesn't sound like a bad idea. The problem is, we get to a point where vaccinations are not a bad idea, but when we start lacing vaccinations with experimental drugs and experimental viruses to spread them to determine their effects on the host population, or we use nanobots and we inject them into people with programs that they go in and they're able to disable part of the person's immune system, let's say, or they can use this as a way to disable a part of a person's immune system, or to inject new diseases and viruses, to allow the pharmaceutical companies to make billions and billions of more dollars by by producing a new vaccination, a new medication to take care of an ailment that was produced by them in the first place. I mean, it was like those antivirus software companies a couple of years ago who we found out they were writing the viruses and then producing the software to fight back against the viruses. I mean, you're into computers. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. They were making money hand over fist. And I have one thing to add to what you're saying right here. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, sure thing.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
I love the sound clips. Oh, I don't play enough of those anymore.
You know, I had to toss that in there because what you're speaking about is absolutely the truth. I mean, you have people like George Soros, who I completely equate to the Galactic Emperor, Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. You mentioned it earlier, and that reminded me of that clip there. I had to do it. You know, the people that are like that are behind it. There really is a darker purpose for it. And yes, it is eugenics based. What point, Ryan, let me put it to you this way. At what point do we have technology, or have the things that they're doing, have the genetic modifications that are going on through the foods, through the vaccines, so on and so forth? At what point are we no longer human?
Right. Well, when we upload our consciousness into a computer, and that's a great question. What point do we reach when we are not human anymore? What happens to the human species? What happens to this grand thought experiment that is human consciousness and awareness in this physical, rigid, three-dimensional reality? When does this stop? Right now, how do we not make the realization? And there's a lot of people, Ira, who are in the field with us, or listeners at the very least, who disagree a lot about things like genetically modified food, not on the basis that it's scientifically sound or not, but on the basis that, well, it's, scientists can do basically whatever they want, that they can do it, why not do it? This is great. And you get people that jump on board with this type of discussion and say, yeah, I want to see my mind uploaded into my awareness, my consciousness uploaded into a computer. It'll be like a movie. It'll be like a video game. But that question comes up again. At what point do we say no? What point do we lose our humanity? At what point have we become part of a grand science experiment? Because whether it's genetically modified foods or the rapid advancement in scientific technology, and I don't want to see, I hate when people come out, hate's a strong word, but I just like when people come out with those stories, or you see the National Geographic, I think we discussed it on this week's show on The Secret Teachings, Ira, about how there's a war on science, there's a war against genetically modified foods, a war against the moon landing, it's a war. People are fighting back against it. Well, a lot of people just don't know the true story. A lot of people don't have the time to sit down and actually think for themselves. So they either believe what's been fed to them, or the very opposite of what's been fed to them, and they fall into a trap, they fall into a second net. What we have, and I'll wrap this up in terms of my opinion on this subject, what we have here is a science experiment where, whether it's genetically modified foods or the rapid advancement in scientific technology, that is dangerously, almost at this point, out of control. I can't imagine what it's going to be like in another decade, let alone 2 decades or the next generation. We are now in the midst, not that this time is any more special than any other. It's the only present moment that ever has existed. Everything else is just little electrical signals that have been laced on our biological computer systems. But we have now entered into a time, Ira, where we really don't know what the future is going to be in terms of evolutionary changes, in terms of the existence of humanity. We should be living in a time where technology should guarantee our extended lifespans, and yet we don't see that technology to the average person. We see the royal family living to 95 or 105 years old, while the average person lives to 65 or 70, if that. A lot of males now are dying in like their early 60s. So by the time you reach, early adulthood, your life's half over. Yet the rich elites are living to be 90 to 100 years old. That might have a lot to do with the blood they're drinking too, because blood actually can reverse the aging process. Yes. But that's a different story. But my base point is that as this rapidly unfolds, we don't know what the future is going to hold. A generation of consuming genetically modified foods with a unpredictable, rapid transition and altering of our DNA. Who knows what genes are going to be switched on or off in future generations that might lie dormant for another generation or two, and then might turn into something horrifying in some way, shape, or form in 200 or 300 years.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know the future.
You are exactly right. And actually, the scientists came out, let's see, I covered it on my show I think it was about a month and a half ago. They came out and said that according to all of the genetic investigations that they've done, all of the research that they've done into the human genome, there are things that are happening to the human genome that the mutations are happening at such a rapid pace that it could very well be that sometime in the very near future we could see X-Men style mutations begin to happen. And maybe that's what they're pushing us towards. Who knows? You never know. But this was legit scientists that are coming out and saying that this is what's happening to the genetic structure, that it's changing so rapidly, that the mutations are happening so rapidly, and they quote unquote don't understand why it's occurring. It's a mystery why it's occurring. Well, look at all the things that we're being exposed to on a constant basis. I've said many times that the drugs that we're being that we're consuming, they've never done the long-term testing on them. The FDA approves the drugs. They give them to the people, the masses, and then we find out what the long-term effects are far afterwards. You look at thalidomide is a great example. My ex-wife was impacted by it, not because she took it herself, but because her mother was on thalidomide and she was directly impacted because of it. And there was a whole generation of people that were impacted by this. You see it happening right now with autism. The autism rates right now are just off the scale. The last year, the results or the numbers from the CDC shows that autism is now 1 in 50. The previous year it was 1 in 88. And by the year 2020, it's going to be 1 in 2. That's literally 1/2 of an entire generation of humanity gone. Just because we have an autistic son, okay? We know what the needs are with somebody who is severely autistic. And we're talking an entire generation where half of them is completely dependent upon the good graces of the other half. What's going to happen after we're gone? You see, this is what we're being led into. It really is this gigantic experiment that's going on to for what end, I don't know, but it's definitely not one that we, the people, we, the great masses of humanity, want, because we're seeing the results already beginning to happen, and it's not good.
Right. And, another thing that gets me, Ira, is that, when I really started getting into research about things like genetic modification, I learned a lot about genetics. Not that I could give you a college thesis on it, but I have a basic understanding. And I remember a story in 2011, this little kid named Alfie Clamp. You remember this kid in Britain?
Yes, I do.
Okay, this kid was born with 3 strands of DNA. Now, whether or not that's a good or a bad thing to, most people's perception, think about this. When we have the mass majority of humans, and we understand that mainstream, our DNA is evolving and changing and mutating. And mutating is not a negative word. It's not. It doesn't mean mutating like the X-Men. It's not necessarily negative. When we see what's happening with genetically modified foods, I personally think that this is a coldly calculated plan. Yes, it's to make money. Yes, it's to patent life. Yes, it's to control things. But I think underneath, it just so eerily to me makes perfect sense. If we see humans literally evolving day by day, spiritually, and through their very genetic structure that makes all of us who we are, which is so complex that geneticists don't even have a basic understanding of what it is in the long run. We can define it, we can look at it, we can play with it, but do we really have any clue what the long-term effects are going to be? Absolutely not. And anybody that tells you any different is lying to your face, whether they've got a PhD or not. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be, whether it's genetic modification of food, or it's the genetic modification of humans, or it's the genetic modification of animals, or cloning, or whatever the case might be. What we've now kind of dipped our feet into is not only a science experiment, but I think we dipped ourselves into a conspiracy that's being controlled by a very small group of people. The same type of eugenicists who were involved with what happened in Nazi Germany, the same eugenicists that were tied in here in the United States when we had death camps in like 1914 executing political dissidents. I mean, this is one of the places where the Germans got their concept for the gas chambers in the first place.
And how many people do not know that?
And most people, I didn't know that till 3 years ago.
Exactly.
When I was researching my book, I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I did some research, and 6 states had legislation for execution through gas.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I think that there's something else going on here, Ira, and I know I rant a lot and I don't always get right to the point. I just have so much going through my head. I try to filter out what I think is important in that split second, even though we know neurons in the brain fire before we even have a thought. Just to see that comes to my mind, and that came to my mind 6 seconds ago. I thought I'd tell you.
Yep, exactly.
And I think that there's something else going on here. I feel like there is a group of people, maybe they're not people, maybe they are extraterrestrial, who understand human beings are evolving rapidly. And in order to quell that descent, that evolutionary descent, they begin to genetically modify food and nature to fight back against that evolutionary change to keep people in a lower vibrational state. And I think the proof in that comes, because a lot of it, again, has to do with money and depopulation, or population control, rather. The proof in that comes in a small company in California called Epicite. This company, not that they brag about it like they get on TV, because most people have never heard of Epicite. Epicite sold their patent to Monsanto. Epicite literally goes in and they isolate the gene in males that causes infertility. Then they splice it with corn so that when you eat the corn goes in and switches off the fertility gene, basically, and makes you infertile. Now, let me just, without cursing and screaming, let me just take a deep breath, let it out, and try to get people to understand that if the company literally isolated an infertility gene and engineered it into corn and then sold it to the biggest group of scumbags on the planet, in my opinion, at Monsanto, one of the biggest groups,
and the biggest corn producers,
DuPont.
the biggest corn producers as well.
Biggest corn. Let's go with that. The biggest corn producers. And they sold it to them, in which they now sell it. That's everywhere. I mean, it's hard to find anything without corn in it. I mean, a lot of like plastic signs are even made with corn at stores, right?
Yes.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And it's carried in the pollen by bees. So you have to be careful when you buy honey, because it's half of it's genetically modified, because you don't know where the pollen comes from. So thinking about it in that respect, there's something much more darker, but yet illuminating, but darker initially on the surface, going on here. If the company literally, and they talk about it, literally did that, they isolated that gene, don't you dare tell me there is not a depopulation policy or a population control policy. When I found that out, and I get people that still tell me, it's a conspiracy. There's nobody trying to control the population. That's just a bunch of hogwash. It's not true. It's a conspiracy. It's not real. Didn't happen. It won't happen. It is real. Just because you deny it does not mean that it's not real. I'm tired of the denial. It's time to open your eyes to the secret teachings. This stuff is real. It's in our face. Not only do you need to open your eyes, but you need to then open your mind a little bit. And that doesn't mean believe everything that I say or what Ira says or believe everything we write or talk about on the show. It just means open your mind, have an original thought, and actually sit down and do the research instead of letting people tell you what to think, instead of letting people tell you what to believe, instead of continuing in this conditioned form to conform to what's popular and hip and trendy. We're conditioned to accept what's just fed to us on a spoon, what to repeat when we're told what is true from birth. We've got to stop this. We've got to cast off the shackles, have an original thought that was not manufactured by some type of corporate governmental think tank. Take back your perception.
Absolutely. Amen, brother. I am totally in agreement with that. I talk about how it's so easy to program we human beings. They have developed ways to be able to program us that would scare the bejeebus out of most people that are out there. Just simply sitting down in front of your monitor right here. I'm sitting in front of my computer right now. Okay. I have my monitor tuned to a frequency that is not normally tuned. Okay. I've adjusted my monitor's frequency to go. Yeah, exactly. There you go. To go to a frequency that's not normally displayed. Because if you keep it at a certain display, your brain gets entrained consciously into the frequency that your monitor is displaying at. And so then when you go to a website, for instance, that has the subtle things in the background, the subtle pictures that are in the background, your consciousness picks those things up and it is programmed by them. The symbology that we spoke about earlier, our brain understands symbols better than it understands language, because language is symbols. The yes. written letters and the written numbers and all of that stuff, those are symbols. The brain instantly, the picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Well, a symbol is worth 1,000,000 words, because it's a combination of many different pictures condensed into one. It's all multiple layers. It's all fractal. And when you're born into this world, you're automatically programmed with an understanding of all of these different symbols that are surrounding you. That's the way it is. It's like the idea of babies today can pick up an iPad and know exactly what to do with it, but they can't pick up a book and be able to turn the pages, because the technology has gotten us to that point where now that is the survival instinct that the evolutionary adaptation has gotten us to. This is the way that they have to learn in order to survive in today's world. So when it all comes down to it, and I'll try to get to my point here, when it all comes down to it, we have this culture and this society where we are surrounded on a constant basis by programming, by the spin doctors, by the ones who want to pull your own strings to lead you down the path that they want you to follow. And if you're doing anything, you have got to really be cautious about what you expose yourself to, because just even going to a web page and watching a video or watching the president speak on the TV, and you think that there's no big deal about, I'm just watching the president, he's just speaking. He's using neurolinguistic programming on you the entire time that he's on the screen, and you're being programmed to respond in whatever way they want you to respond with. That's the world that we live in right now, and that's the thing that people really have got to understand. Stop being programmed and start actually knowing and understanding that you are not the person that you were born to be. You are the person that they have made you into.
Yep, and if we don't come to that realization and find a way to break out of that programming, then you are a very, whether you define it literally or symbolically, we are a slave to perception. We are a slave to so many things in our lives. And it's so funny that when you say slaves, most people think, only blacks have been slaves. No, you're absolutely wrong. I mean, the Bible itself is full of hundreds of stories about slavery. And it's just incredible to me that when you really begin to do the research, and when I say do the research, what I mean is stop your television, turn it off. Stop playing games for a second. Put your phone down. Put your iPad down. Just go into a room for a moment and sit in silence and let all the stress and the worry just kind of go away. Pick up a book. Maybe you want to start with fiction. Maybe you don't. Pick up a book and start reading it. Find something that's interesting to you. Originally, what was interesting to me before I got into all of this, I was always interested in Area 51 and aliens. We're going to talk a lot about that on Sunday as well, Ira. But one of the things that really got me into studying more details of reality and the nature of reality was studying physics. That was really interesting to me, and I learned a lot about physics, and then that kind of got me into the idea of what is the universe, what is all of this that we call matter. And later that led me to where I am today. And I did that through a mainstream outlet. Anybody can do that. If we sit down, isolate a subject that's interesting to us, we will begin to realize that if we actually have a true open mind, not only does learning become easy, but it becomes fun, because you begin to realize that, look, I'm doing this by myself. A teacher didn't show me this. A friend didn't show me this. Nobody told me this is how it is and I should do this. This is fun because I'm doing it myself. I've taught myself this. I've taught myself that. I'm open to making a mistake and realizing I made that mistake so that I can learn from it later. It's not a bad thing to make a mistake like we're told. If we can begin to, I think, have that open mind, take a step back, and look at things a second time in a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th way, the world begins to look fundamentally different, and you can begin living a second life within a matter of a couple of days if you really just kind of meditate on those concepts long enough. And look, the good thing about this, Ira, is you don't have to send us $39.95.
I like the reference. I approve. You're right. And it really does get into the point where you find the passion yourself, and it does become a really interesting subject of study. You can start following your own dots and lead yourself into a realm that you never expected that you could go. And sometimes that's actually the most beautiful of places. For me, when I was younger, I did all of my different research into every topic that I could find, and then I found the ones that I had the most focus on. But I still kind of retain all of those other things. So for me, my big passions are trying to get people to understand that what you see as being the reality is not the reality. The body that you're in is not actually what you are. You are a being of energy. You're a being of atoms, made up completely of energy. This is the actual life form that you are. And the only thing that makes you see the things that you see or believe the things that you believe are the things that your senses have told you. But your senses are so easily lied to. You can walk down the road and you can see an accident take place, and the police officer can ask you the questions about what happened in the accident, and he could ask 20 different people that saw the exact same accident what happened, and he's going to get 20 different answers to what ended up happening there. Well, it's either a thing of there were 20 different accidents that took place, or perceptions lie. And that's the basis of reality that we have in our faces right here and right now.
That's right, Ira. That's why we are slaves to perception. I've been saying it for a couple of years now. That's why I named the subtitle of the book, The Grand Illusion, Slaves to Perception, because we are slaves to perception. Our perception can easily be hijacked. From taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing. All of it can be easily hijacked. All of it can be easily influenced. Subliminal messaging, neurolinguistic programming, as you mentioned. I was watching last night. I finally, for the first time in a long time, I broke out my X-Files collection, and I put in the episode from, I think it was like season 3 or 4, where Mulder and Scully go to this little small town. And they're investigating the murder. This guy, he claims that he's been seeing this same guy. He keeps coming back to life, and he keeps killing him. But it's not really the same guy. It's multiple people that his perception's being programmed to believe is the same person. It turns out that there's this test that's going on, I guess, by the government or some company. They're using some type of frequency that's in the television. So when they're projecting the signal to the screen, they're projecting a different type of signal that creates a sense of mind control, or a sense of open suggestibility, if you will. So I thought that was interesting that we talk about that tonight, because I just watched that last night. But that is so important to understand, whether it's your computer screen or whether it's your television or your iPod or your iPad, rather. There is so much within an image, there is so much within a video, and there's so much within just a simple symbol or language, as you said, letters, numbers. Those are all symbols in and of themselves. Subconsciously, your subconscious reacts to those symbols without your conscious even realizing that the subconscious has acted in that way, and it can therefore influence you in the future. Now, it goes to a different level than when people being conditioned to a point where there doesn't even need to really be any type of programming. There just needs to, once they create this consensus socially of what is considered normal, people begin to control themselves. If you go out in public and, you wear something that's not socially acceptable, people stare at you. Your friends or your family might say, oh, you don't want to wear that. We're going to this restaurant. Don't wear that. People won't accept that. You condition and police yourselves. You buy tracking devices and you carry them with you everywhere you go. You buy microphones and video cameras for your house. The system doesn't need to take control. The system has control. You just help it to control you.
Absolutely right. And unfortunately, Ryan, we are out of time. We got about 2 minutes left. If you want to hit us with anything on last bit of information, go for it.
As always, I just say do the research and do the math. Stop letting people tell you what to think, including myself, and I think I can speak for Ira. Begin to connect the dots between seemingly unconnected people, places, and events in the world that seems so complex will actually begin to make sense. Don't forget to catch The Secret Teachings. Ira will be my guest host on Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the LNM Radio Network. The show, The Alien Myth, will be talking about DUMBs, Area 51, Nellis Air Force Base, and much, much more. Ira, thank you. Tonight was a pleasure.
I had a great time myself tonight. For those of you who don't know, the LNM Network does have a new show that broadcasts on Thursday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Brothers at Arms. It's with myself and my brother Joe Long. We have a conversation sort of like tonight, where we're just having a conversation with each other, but we come at it from different angles so you guys get a really good viewpoint on things. On Friday, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my own show is broadcast on LateNightInTheMidlands.com. It's called Open Eyes. This week, we're going to talk about consensus reality, and I think that you guys are going to have a good time listening to it. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for being here. This has been The Last Frequency. My name is Ira Robinson.
And this is Ryan Gable. Stay tuned.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Everybody out there, keep safe out there and have fun, and thank you so much for listening.